Hell Kaiser, the big man on campus. Zane Truesdale is considered to be one of the more formidable duelists in the GX series, with his deck, the Cyber Dragons, enjoying considerable play and support over the years with their emphatic combos and OTK potential. In fact, it's the only rival I can actually think of that actually has a positive win to loss ratio against the main protagonist of a Yu-Gi-Oh series. So what if we take Zane and transport him to the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds? Does he still have what it takes to conquer the slums of Satellite and win the coveted Fortune Cup? Or will he be washed away trying? That's what we're here to find out. Similarly to the previous video, check it out if you haven't already by the way. We constructed a card pool of the cards Zane is seen playing through all 4 seasons, and it really wasn't that big of a chore this time. Contrary to him being Jaden's main rival, confirmed by the writers of GX, he really doesn't duel all that often. Zane duels a measly 3 times in Season 1, 4 to 5 times in Season 2, a few times in Season 3 and once in Season 4. This means that outside of his signature Cyber Dragon cards and the materials to fuel his OTK combos, we really won't have that extensive of a card pool to play around with. The world of Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds in this game brings about 3 styles of dueling that we'll need to overcome. Standing duels, which is just your regular duel, tag duels using the Tag Force format, and more interestingly, riding duels. The duel type that the 5D show is centered around, replacing spell cards with their ironically named slower counterparts in the speed spells. The difference between a regular duel and a riding duel is that the spell cards actually require a resource to be used in the form of speed counters. Both players will receive a speed counter on each standby phase, with 12 being the maximum you can hold at any given time, and the spell cards will have a minimum amount you need to have before activating them. This usually falls in the 8 to 10 range. You lose speed counters if you end up taking damage as well, and the amount scales to 1 speed counter for every 1000 points of damage. In essence, this turns Yu-Gi-Oh into a game much closer to its rivals in Magic the Gathering, where the game revolves more around the resource management as opposed to the combos you can activate freely. I'll get into the main card by card for the riding deck when it becomes relevant, but I will say it was the perfect opportunity to build a deck surrounding Zane's latter strategies in the Cyber Darks. With the duels being far slower in tempo because spell cards are rarely used, this pretty much makes the baby Cyber Dark somewhat viable theoretically. Enough about that though. For our standing deck, we're piloting the Cyber Dragon archetype in its purest form. We of course have the 3 copies of Cyber Dragon. You can't have a Zane deck without these bad boys after all. Level 5 monsters that can be special summoned from the hand if the opponent controls a monster whilst we don't. This card is central to our grander fusion plays, as every fusion monster Zane ever uses has Cyber Dragon listed as one of its materials. 3 copies of Proto Cyber Dragon, don't let its abysmal stat line fool you. This bad boy has the effect of having the name of Cyber Dragon whilst on the field. It retains its original stat line, however, having this at 3 copies virtually gives us 6 Cydras to use as fusion materials for pretty much free. We can save our actual copies of Cyber Dragon here for the special summoning effect, as long as we draw into at least 2 copies of Proto Cyber Dragon. Either way, it's a massive buff to this deck's consistency. Cyber Phoenix and Cyber Folly both allow us to draw a card from the deck, when destroyed by battle or by negating the opponent's attacks respectively. We're running both at 3 copies as we need as much draw power as we can get. Armoured Cybern has a Union-like effect where it can equip itself to a Cyber Dragon, and then pop a card on the opponent's field by halving Cydra's attack stat. We're running 1 copy simply because it has 2000 defense, and Zane really doesn't play that many monsters throughout the series to fill the numbers. Our final 2 monsters aren't machine types, but dragons. Infernal Dragon is a level 4 2000 attacker that destroys itself in the end phase if it attacks, and then it can revive itself by tributing another monster we control. It's here simply for tempo, and to keep the opponent's board clear. This synergizes really well with the anime version of the Cyber Darks, as they can equip level 4 dragon monsters from the grave, instead of the level 3 like the TCG and the OCG, which makes sense why Zane even plays it at all. And finally, we're running 3 copies of Explore the Dragon. It's a level 3 dragon with a measly 1000 attack points. Its effects though more than makes up for it. It's essentially the dragon's typing version of Exiled Force. Instead of being tributed to resolve its effects, it can pop a monster on the opponent's field when destroyed by battle, and we don't take the battle damage from the battle we initiate. If we ever find ourselves in a bind, Explore the Dragon can pretty much clear anything we ask of it, and it will synergize with the Cyber Darks come the riding duels. When it comes to the spell cards, Zane runs all of the power. 2 copies of Creature Swap that forces both players to pick a monster and then they trade them. This will be used to trade our weaker monsters for the big beaters, or annoying in general cards the opposition will throw us. 2 copies of Defusion. With this being a heavy fusion deck with an OTK strategy, Defusion is great in extending those plays by returning all the fusion materials we used back to the field. It also gives us a lot more flexibility with our limited fusion materials. Say we summon Cyber Twin Dragon earlier in the duel, and we run into a monster that can't be destroyed by battle. That's not a problem here, as we can bring back the 2 Sidras used for the initial fusion with Defusion, and then refuse into Cyber End Dragon to deal piercing damage. A player Zane does utilise himself in his first duel against Jaden. We're running 3 copies of Different Dimension Capsule. This is basically worst gold sarcophagus. It does the exact same thing, banishing a card from our deck and we get to add it into our hand in 2 turns. Since this deck has 1 pot of greed, this will be our main way of searching the materials or combo pieces we need for our game plan. Where it differs from Gold Sarc though and ultimately becomes a lot worse is that DDC acts like an equip card. It remains on the field for those 2 turns. If it's destroyed before those 2 turns resolve, the card we banished through the effect is gone forever. Gold Sarcophagus on the other hand leaves the field the minute it resolves. So unless the opponent can somehow send the banished card back to the graveyard, it's a guaranteed free search. I don't like this particularly because of the heavy back row removal present in this early synchro format, but we simply don't have any other means of searching for specific cards. Alongside that, we're playing 1 copy of Future Fusion. This is basically a summoning version of Different Dimension Capsule. You play it, select a fusion monster from your extra deck, and send the materials for that fusion to the graveyard. And in 2 turns, if it's still active, you can summon the fusion monster to the field. If this card leaves the field though, so does the monster. We're playing this because it's an easy way to turbo into one of Zane's more expensive fusions in the Cyber End Dragon, since it needs 3 Cyber Dragons as its fusion material. It's simply far quicker through the effects of Future Fusion as we don't need all the pieces in hand. But it also has a secondary effect of acting like a foolish burial for multiple monsters. Monsters we can then bring back via Monster Reborn, and as long as a monster hits the board, it counts as a proper fusion summon, so we could then defuse to revive the materials from the graveyard. With the flexibility that it offers, there's no reason for us to not play it. Up next, we're running 3 copies of Zane's other signature card, Power Bond. This is basically polymerization for machine types specifically, where if the monster is successfully fusion summoned, its attack points are doubled. This turns Cyber End Dragon into an 8k behemoth with piercing damage, and Cyber Twin Dragon into a 5600 attacker that can attack twice per turn, perfect for OTKs. The drawback is during the end phase, we will take burn damage equal to the monster's original attack points. In the anime, this was a very high risk but high reward strategy, since they play with 4000 life points, and if Zane couldn't finish the duel on the turn he used this, in most cases he was going to lose. For us it's far stronger simply because we have doubled the life total, but even if we are put into a position where Power Bond can deal lethal damage, as long as we win the duel we won't suffer the nasty side effects in the end phase. This is paired beautifully with our single copies of Limiter Removal and Megamorph, 2 spell cards that double the attack points of our monsters, again under 2 conditions. For Limiter, it only affects machine type monsters, and said monsters affected are destroyed in the end phase of the turn it's used. Megamorph on the other hand will only double the attack points of the equipped monster, as long as our life points are currently lower than the opponent's. And thanks to Power Bond, we can turn that nasty little side effect into a significant buff to our fusions. To round off our fusion spells, we're playing a lone copy of Overlord Fusion. This card isn't nearly as good in this game as the others, because for some reason one of Zane's signature traps in Powerball just isn't in the game, so we aren't able to mill the fusion materials to the grave in order to use them with this. Overlord Fusion requires 1 Cyber Dragon as the material, and the rest just have to be generic machine types to special summon 1 Dark Attribute Machine Fusion, specifically Chimeritic Over Dragon, a monster that gains 800 attack points for every fusion material used for its summon, and can attack multiple times, just with the drawback of sending every other card to the graveyard that we currently control on summon. I don't foresee a use for this really outside of a last resort scenario. Zane quite frankly plays far more consistent fusions for this to be even remotely viable. And of course, Zane runs the power spells of Mystical Space Typhoon at 2 copies alongside Monster Reborn and Pot of Greed. He also plays Graceful Charity as well, but I opted for Pot of Greed because I just prefer the flat +2 with no extra cost. His trap offering, aside from 2 specific cards, are atrocious. I guess it makes sense as Zane's entire playstyle is to just obliterate an opponent quickly with Power Bond. he's never really placed on the back foot, so he wouldn't need the likes of Mirror Force for example. Nevertheless, we're running one copy of Call of the Haunted. Self-explanatory really, with this just being the trap variant of Premature Burial. DNA Surgery at 3 allows us to declare a type of monster, and all monsters on the field become that type. This trap combos with one fusion monster in particular, Chimeritic Fortress Dragon. This beast gains 1000 attack points for every machine type monster used as materials. And the more important part, it can use fusion materials from both players' fields. You see where I'm going with this, right? Since Chimeritic isn't summoned through a fusion spell and instead contacts fuses similarly to Jaden's Neospacians, as long as we have either Cyber Dragon or Proto available to us, and DNA Surgery is active, we can clear the opponent's field through no cost and end up with a very powerful fusion monster pretty damn consistently. We're running this at 3 copies as well, so this is by no means a one-off strategy. Fortress Dragon and DNA Surgery will be essential in clearing the opponent's problem cards, all the while providing us an easy means of an OTK. The rest of the track cards Zane uses are very specific to the Cyber Dragon archetype, with niche effects that won't really play a role at all in most situations. So we're running 2 copies of Return Soul, which can return up to 3 monsters that were destroyed the turn it's activated. This includes monsters both destroy by battle or card effects like Mirror Force. We can even use this to return monsters to the opponent's deck, especially those that we don't want to be in the graveyard thanks to their floater effects. It's not great, don't get me wrong, but it was either this or Attack Reflect Unit, so I picked the best of a bad bunch. We're also running Damage Pulverizer and Fusion Guard. These 2 cards basically do the same thing, they negate effect damage, but with Damage Pulverizer we actually get to draw a card if the effect resolves, and with Fusion Guard we send 1 fusion monster to the graveyard from the extra deck. I'm not entirely sure how good Fusion Guard is going to be, because I don't believe you're able to revive the fusion monster milled because it wasn't summoned to the field before it was sent to the graveyard, but we'll see. For our fusions, we're running a playset of pretty much everything. Cyber Twin Dragon for its double attack, Cyber End Dragon for its piercing damage, Chimeritic Fortress Dragon and Chimeritic Over Dragon. Game plan wise, we're going to probably want to go into Chimeritic Fortress Dragon or Cyber End Dragon as often as possible, as this is the point in the game where the graveyard actually becomes a second extra deck of sorts. Ending a duel through piercing damage just seems like a safer bet than relying on Cyber Twin Dragon attacking over the monsters. With the card by card out of the way, let's jump straight in. Zane finds himself face planted in the ghetto of what once was Yugimoto's hometown, having experienced a bender so majestic it has transported him through time. We're found by this kid Raleigh who wants to take on the pro duelist, insisting that he's lost his memory and dueling him might help Zane remember something. Bro, we went on a night out, we didn't get hit by a train. To give Raleigh some credit here, for a starting duelist the deck really isn't that bad. Raleigh, like us, is also playing a machine-oriented deck, which is great for us thanks to Chimeritic Fortress Dragon. Unlike our Cyber Dragons, it's pretty generic, featuring one-offs of some iconic cards such as X-Head Cannon, Cannon Soldier, Rocket Warrior, Card Trooper, and even Decoy's here too for the draw power. The rest of his monsters aren't really worth going over as they're rather underwhelming, and the only synchronization they have is through their mutual machine typing. Turbo Booster is his signature card, which functions as a pretty jank spot removal. It can tribute itself to destroy a monster on our side of the field if it's battled with one of his. So we can run into our stronger monsters, take the destruction and the damage, and then pop ours through this effect. It's pretty slow and I don't think it's going to be that useful honestly. Raleigh sports a decent spell and drop package for how early he is in the game. Since he's on machines, he's also on the limited removal shenanigans. Banner of Courage at 1 copy gives a flat 200 point boost to all of his monsters on the field. Machine Duplication can turbo out Turbo Booster, pun entirely intended, when the situation calls for it. Mind Control is a very powerful spell card in this era of the game. It's essentially brain control on steroids. It can take control of one monster on the opponent's side of the field regardless of its positioning, so it can target set monsters. And whilst its side effect sounds bad, as the monster stolen cannot declare an attack or be tributed, you forget, this is the Synchro era. So depending on the monster stolen, this can easily turbo into a level 8 to 10 Synchro monster right from the get-go, and a Synchro that's summoned still is capable of declaring an attack on that turn. Granted, Raleigh doesn't play Synchro monsters at all, so Mind Control isn't at its full power here. Even so though, if he takes one of our stronger fusion monsters, we really won't be in a position to get over it unless we're lucky enough to draw into another Cyber Dragon and contact fusion it off the board. He plays 1 copy of both Remove Trap and D-Spell. Early Yu-Gi-Oh cards that served as spot removal, really jank and slow in general, and since he only plays one of each, our Future Fusion and Different Dimension capsules are virtually safe no matter the situation. For his trap package, he's running one copy of Acid Trap Hole. It really won't be useful since we only play one defender with 2000 attack points. Malfunction is decent being a weaker 7 tools of the bandit, negating a trap card for the cost of 500 life points. Only the trap remains on the field rather than being destroyed. He runs this at 2 copies, so I guess it does counter our Return Soul with it being context sensitive. Finally, 1 copy of Spellbinding Circle and 2 copies of Waboku. Both are here to stop our attacks, and I guess I can see a world where we lose to the negative side effect of Power Bond and Limited Removal if you can just flip Waboku to negate the battle damage for that turn. It's the first duel of the game though, so I'm not expecting too much difficulty. Also, if you're wondering why Zane here is sporting a Dark Magician cosplay, it's the only outfit in the game that gives him both the hair length and the colour that he actually has. I tried my best, okay? Rally starts things off nice and slow with a set monster and 2 back row. We draw Cyber Phoenix a turn and sensing an opportunity for an easy kill, play Future Fusion targeting Cyber End Dragon, milling the 3 copies of Cyber Dragon to the graveyard. Targeting Monster Reborn with our Different Dimension capsule, since Rally only has 1 copy of D-Spell, even if he gets over the Future Fusion we can reborn one of the Cyber Dragons as insurance. Summoning Cyber Phoenix, we attempt to swing over his set card and he responds with Waboku, ensuring its survival. It's good to get 1 copy of that out the way now in the event Future Fusion resolves and we can actually deal piercing damage. Gradius is flipped up and we end our turn setting Creature Swap. Rally summons Turbo Booster in attack position and crosses Gradius into Cyber Phoenix, and both are destroyed. We draw a card per Phoenix's effect, with it being Proto Cyber Dragon, and Rally can't do anything else. We draw Damage Polarizer for turn, setting it. Summoning Proto Cyber Dragon to the field in attack position, it's fusion time! We take Rally's Turbo Booster with for the material and summon our first Fortress Dragon to the open board with 2000 attack points. Despite being relatively weak, it's still stronger than everything else Rally has outside of being boosted by Limited Removal, and we can swing in for 2000 points of direct damage. The only thing Rally can muster up at this point is a set monster, and from this position we pretty much have the duel in the bag, as both Future Fusion and Different Dimension Capsule resolve, giving us both Cyber End Dragon on the field and Monster Reborn in the hand. We drew Limited Removal for turn as well, so all it takes is for us to activate it before damage calculation, and Cyber End Dragon inflicts 7000 points of direct damage to Rally's Viper, ending the duel right there and then. And now you know why I love Cyber Dragon so much. To make this oblivious kid feel better, Zane lies and says that he does remember something, his name, and we're told to go meet up with the rest of Rally's crew in the abandoned subway. We're confronted at the entrance by Tristan Taylor's son, Nervin. I mean Blitz. Yeah. The funny thing about this game is that they switched around the names of 2 of Rally's friends. Bandana Boy here is actually called Blitz, and Spec's name is Nervin, to fit with the nerd theme of his design. No idea why they switched them around though, so I'm going to be using their actual names from this point on. Blitz shoos us away before recognizing the notorious Hell Kaiser. Being a fanboy, he begs us for a duel and says he will allow us through if we do so. Blitz pilots a very weak vanilla deck revolving around equip spells that either boost his monster's attack points, inflicts burn damage to us if he destroys one of our monsters, or to prevent our monsters from declaring an attack. His boss monster is Cosmo Queen, a 2900 2-tribute monster from the earliest era of the game. A monster he can unreliably turbo out through the effect of his only copy of Dark Effigy, that can act as the 2 tributes in the tribute summon of a Dark Attribute monster. He plays 1 copy of this, so I don't think it's going to be anything to be concerned about. Blitz does not play any of the quote good equips, those being United We Stand, Mage Power, etc. Running several copies of Big Bang Shot and Fairy Meteor Crush that both grant the equipped monster piercing damage. Outside of Cosmo Queen, none of his other monsters are actually strong enough to hit over our defensive wall in Armoured Cybern. Parrot Dragon, his second strongest monster, matches its defense stat at 2000 attack points. So these are only going to be effective if we can get Cosmo Queen on the field. Paralyzing Potion equips to one of our monsters and said monster is unable to declare an attack. It's okay I suppose, like everything else is running this at 1 copy, so there's a very high likelihood that it simply won't come up. Share the Pain is an early form of spot removal, where we both have to sacrifice a monster, but we can choose to target on our side of the board. So this is pretty much useless if we have multiple bodies on the field. Symbol of Duty is the only good card he has spell-wise. which allows him to revive a monster from either our graveyards at the cost of sending a vanilla monster to the grave. He could revive our fusion materials with Sender or a big body if the impossible happens and he's able to hit over them. For the traps, he's running Birthright at 1 copy, a Call of the Haunted exclusive to vanilla monsters. This can turbo his Cosmo Queen from the graveyard. 2 copies of Jar of Greed, a really slow draw card on the count of it being a trap that you have to set, and that it only gives you 1 additional draw. This is his only form of draw power in the deck, by the way, to give you any indication to how slow this deck actually is. And to round things off, 1 copy of Negate Attack, to well, negate the battle phase once. The Cosmos will have to align for Blitz to stand any chance here. Oh, look at that! We braked! Anyway, Blitz sets a humble T set and passes to us. We draw Explore the Dragon for turn, and without any other option set 1 copy of DNA Surgery alongside Damage Pulverizer and our Call of the Haunted, summoning it to the field in attack position. Since we don't take any battle damage during any battle involving Explore the Dragon that we initiate, we swing into the set monster just to see what he's working with, flipping Robotic Knight into face up defense. With that, we end our turn. In the standby phase, Blitz activates his set Jar of Greed to draw an additional card, tributing Robotic Knight for Parrot Dragon. He equips it with Big Bang Shot to boost its attack points to 2400. Parrot Dragon swings over Explore the Dragon, and we do actually take 1400 points of battle damage here since Explore the Dragon isn't the one to initiate the attack. I actually can't believe we're losing to this guy right now. On the plus side, Explore the Dragon's effect does resolve and the Parrot Dragon is also destroyed, bringing us back to an equal board state. He ends his turn by setting an additional 2 back row. We draw Cyber Fowler and have no choice but to summon it. Its effect will negate 1 attack and allow us to draw a card, so no matter what he does on his next turn, we're pretty much safe. In the standby phase, Blitz uses his final copy of Jar of Greed to draw another card, summoning Armored Lizard in attack position. He goes all in at this point, equipping Lizard with 2 equips in Ballista of Rampart Smashing and Fairy Meteor Crush, attempting to swing over Cyber Fally. We'll use Fally's effects to negate the attack and draw a card, drawing another break in return Soul. For our turn, we draw Monster Reborn, finally, using its effect to revive his Parrot Dragon, and from this point on, we pretty much win the game. With only 1 copy of Negate Attack and no real way of getting Cosmo Queen on the field at this stage, he can only watch whilst we annihilate his board presence over the next couple of turns, advancing our own with the combo of DNA Surgery and Kuroe Cyber Dragon to get Chimeric Fortress Dragon online. If there's any good time to break, it's whilst we're dueling against these peons, I'd say. Rally returns to see the confrontation and clears everything up. Inside the hideout, we encounter yet more fanboys in the likes of the Real Nervin and Tank, both requesting a duel with the once famous Pro Duelist. Tank is up first and the theme revolving his deck are effects monsters. He plays a large package of them with a range of different effects. Crystal Seer for the draw power, a single copy of each of the gadgets to thin the deck. Not really that useful as the strength of these 3 come in having multiple copies. 2 copies of Hane Hane to bounce things back to the hand, Manny to bug as spot removal, 3 copies of Thunder Dragon to further thin the deck out, Kuroe both in the form of the original and its winged variant to synergize with a lone copy of Flute summoning Kuroe in his spell package. These are all pretty much here to stall the game out. 2 copies of Time Wizard to try and wipe our board state. Given the low power of the deck, this really isn't that big of a risk, as he really doesn't have anything worth keeping on the board to begin with. And the most interesting monster in his lineup is Muka Muka. This is essentially like Slife of the Sky Dragon, gaining attack points times the amount of cards in his hand. In Muka's case being 300 as opposed to Slifer's 1000. Yes, it is jank, but it can be useful at the start of the duel where its attack can be close to 2000. And if he searches into the 2 copies of Thunder Dragon and the gadgets, I could see this having a little bit of staying power. He plays 1 trot card in Reckless Greed at 2 copies. This allows him to draw 2 cards from the deck with the trade-off of skipping his draw phase for the following 2 turns. You can actually activate multiple copies of this card in 1 turn and get a +4 to 6 and still only be forced to wait 2 additional turns, as the penalty doesn't stack. As for the spell package, he plays a ton of random cards that don't really synergize together at all. Outside of Gold Sarcophagus and Giant Trunade, I wouldn't exactly call this good stuff, more like mid stuff. He has some burn in Meteor of Destruction, Final Flame and Ukaze, removal in Mystic Box and Tribute to the Doom, Spell Shattering Arrow destroys all facial spells on our side of the field, a natural counter to our continuous spell heavy package, draw power in Reload and Mystical Cards of Light, and recycling in Monster Reincarnation and Pot of Avarice. There's some decent stuff in here, all things considered. It just doesn't really synergize together at all, so we'll see how much of a problem he ends up posing. Tank does get his Muka Muka off on turn 1, boosting its attack stat to 2400 points from the jump. He then sabotages it all by setting a back row, reducing its attack stat down to 1800, now making it low enough for the Cyber Dragon in our hand to swing over it in the following turn. We draw different dimension cards over turn and activate Pot of Greed, drawing 2 cards from the deck. Future Fusion mills the other 2 copies of Cyber Dragon from the deck to target Cyber Twin Dragon from the extra deck. Activating different dimension capsule, we target a copy of Power Bond. And before special summoning Sidra from our hand, we set the 2 traps in DNA Surgery and Damage Pulverizer. Cyber Dragon is successful in swinging over the Muka Muka and we end our turn, having set Armored Cybern. Tank activates Meteor of Destruction, attempting to burn for 1000 points of damage. And one of our more niche traps actually sees some use case here. Damage Pulverizer negates all cards that deal effect damage and we draw a card as an additional bonus. It's so specific, I never imagined it would actually be resolved. And we draw Monster Reborn off the effect. Tank then uses Reload to reshuffle his hand back to the deck to draw a fresh one. He sets a monster and activates Nightmare's Steel Cage, preventing us from declaring an attack for 2 turns. We draw Creature Swap for turn, and since we can't do anything because of the Steel Cage, pass it back to Tank. Tank flips to set Hane Hane to return Cyber Dragon back to the hand. He then summons Red Gadget, which allows him to grab a Yellow Gadget from the deck, ending his turn without a battle phase. We draw another copy of DNA Surgery for turn, and since 2 turns have passed for both Future Fusion and Different Dimension Capsule, we get both our Power Bond to hand and Cyber Twin Dragon on the field. We then use our D-Fusion to return Cyber Twin back to the extra deck in exchange for the 2 Cyber Dragons currently sat in our graveyard. In the end phase, Nightmare's Steel Cage expires, allowing us to nuke his field on the following turn. Tank activates Ukaze, burning us for 800 points. He then swings Red Gadget into our Armored Cybern, and he takes 800 points from the stat difference. All he can do at this stage is set another monster and pass the turn. We draw Overlord Fusion, and ladies and gentlemen, this duel is a wrap. With Hane Hane only having 500 defense points, our Power Bond boosted Cyber End is able to inflict 7500 points of piercing damage to win the duel. The final duel with the friend group is with the real Nervin. He utilises a defense/deck destruction package, filling his monster selection with a ton of walls with high defense with the likes of Gravekeeper's Spy to form an impenetrable defense. Needleworm is a monster that straight up rips 5 cards from the top of our deck on flip summon, and he's running 3 of these, so losing 15 cards from the deck immediately isn't going to be good. Morphin Jar of course is here for the draw power. Heroes Shadow Scout like Needleworm can look at the top 3 cards on our deck, and all the spell cards get milled to the grave, which will hurt us inherently because of our spell heavy package. Morphin Jar number 2 can wipe the board clean and excavate the deck for the amount of monsters sent back. You then summon all level 4 or below monsters you draw from this effect. Great for him considering his wall strategy is filled with weaker monsters. Not good for us, especially if we've already got a big body on the board. Destiny Hero Defender is a 2700 point wall that forces us to draw an extra card each draw phase, and his boss monster, I guess you can call it that, is Millennium Shield. A 3k wall he can cheese out via the 1 copy of Ancient Rules in his spell package. The rest of his spell selection are here to gradually destroy our deck throughout the course of the duel, in Gravekeeper's Servant and Dark World Dealings. Spot removal in Share the Pain, Shrink to prevent us from hitting over his bigger walls, delaying the duel for an extra turn, and ironically Beatdown in Shield and Sword at 2 copies, which reverses the attack and defense stat of every monster on the field for a turn when it's activated. His goal here is to have Shield, Defenders, and several copies of Spy on the field, and then turn the tides by turning them into massive beat stakes through the spell card. In comparison, his trap selection is really lackluster. He's running 1 copy of 2-pronged attack, a really miserable 2-for-1 that has never been good, even when it first came out at the very start of the card game. Castle Walls buffs the defense stat of his already massive walls, and Cemetery Bomb burns us for 100 points of damage for every card in our graveyard. With 2 copies, this can burn us for 3k of damage potentially if he's able to resolve all 3 copies of Needleworm. And finally, Disturbance Strategy at 1 copy, which will force us to reshuffle our hand back to the deck and redraw a fresh hand. I can see this guy being really annoying to duel if we aren't able to get Cyber End Dragon out on the field rather quickly. Our deck doesn't really do well against stallers like this. We have far more success against other beatdown decks since we can easily wipe their board clean with DNA Surgery for Chimeritic Fortress Dragon, so I guess we'll just have to see. Nervin starts with a humble tea set and passes just like the rest of them. We draw Cyber Valley for turn, setting our 2 trap cards in Return Soul and DNA Surgery before summoning it in attack position. Even with his focus on defensive monsters, the AI should still swing into Cyber Valley, recognising its 0 attack stats. Which they do. Nervin flips over his Giant Soldier of Stone and for some reason wastes his Shield and Sword card. I guess it does increase Stone's attack to 2k, but he really didn't need it to hit over Cyber Valley. Not that it matters anyway, as we negate the attack for his Valley's effects and draw a different dimension capsule. Nervin sets another monster before ending the turn. Drawing Proto Cyber Dragon for turn, we activate DNA Surgery, turning all monsters on the field into the machine type. Summoning Proto Cyber Dragon to the field changes its name to the original, and we can then contact fuse itself with Nervin's Giant Soldier of Stone to fusion summon Chimeritic Fortress Dragon. A bit of a misplay looking back. I should have attacked the set monster with Proto Sidra and then do this in main phase 2. That way Fortress Dragon would be at 4k instead of 2 because of the Gravekeeper Spy being set, and he would end up with an open board. Instead, he has 2 2k defenders now, and we really can't do anything other than activate different dimension capsule targeting future fusion. Nervin sets another back row and passes, and we draw Exploder Dragon for turn. I misplay yet again using Defusion on our Fortress Dragon, thinking we would get our Proto Cyber Dragon back from the graveyard. I'm not entirely sure why this doesn't work, whether Contact Fusion doesn't count as a real fusion summon, or whether it's because Proto Cyber Dragon's name is changed to Cyber Dragon whilst it's on the field only, so it doesn't recognise it as the fusion material whilst in the graveyard. No matter the case, this leaves us with a wide open board, and so we have no choice but to set the Exploder Dragon here. Nervin switches both copies of Spy into attack position, swinging over our Exploder Dragon. Our dragon at least takes one of them down with it, so that's nice, but we do take 1200 points of damage from the direct attack. He then sets a card before calling it a turn. We draw our Monster Reborn, and different dimension capsule resolves adding Future Fusion to our hand. We activate Future Fusion, milling the 3 copies of Cyber Dragon from the deck to the grave, targeting Cyber End Dragon from the extra deck, reviving one of them with our Monster Reborn, and then contact fusing it with the Spy on Nervin's field to resummon Fortress Dragon. Yes, Fortress Dragon is weaker than the lone copy of Cyber Dragon here, but I did this favouring the direct damage since without Shield and Swords, he doesn't have an out to a 2k beta and was successful in attacking directly. This forces Nervin's hand into using Ancient Rules on his Woodborg Impachi, which only has 2500 points of defense. Higher than Fortress Dragon's attack, but we know he wanted to use this with Millennium Shield, so it's great we force him to get it out of the way now. We draw Call of Haunted for turn, and in the battle phase we attack into his Impachi and take 500 points of damage from the bout. This might look stupid on first glance, but since our life points are now lower than his, this unlocks the power of Megamorph, doubling the attack of any monster equipped to it, intending to pair this with the Cyber End Dragon next turn once it's summoned via Future Fusion to go off a game. Before that though, we set the Call of the Haunted. Nervin sets a single back row ending his turn, and we draw Infernal Dragon, summoning it to the field. Future Fusion resolves, fusion summoning Cyber End Dragon to the field and attack position, and we equip it with the Megamorph, halving its attack for now since we still have 300 more life points than our opponent. This changes in the battle phase when we crash our Infernal into Impachi, reducing our life points to 5800 and doubling Cyber End stats to 8000. Cyber End Dragon attempts to inflict 5500 points of piercing damage, and Nervin counters this with Shrink. This interacts with Megamorph in a weird way, as it overrides the buff from Megamorph, reducing Cyber End Dragon back to 2000 points, when realistically it should be 4000. We take a further 500 points of damage because of this, and have no way to hit over Impachi until next turn. Infernal Dragon is destroyed in the end phase because of its effects, and we opt to not bring it back. Nervin sets a single monster and we draw Cyber Valley, summoning it to the field. We then revive our other Cyber Dragon through Call of the Haunted, contact fusing it with our Valet and Nervin's Impachi to summon another Fortress Dragon sitting at 3000 attack points. Cyber End Dragon swings it into his set monster, and he counters with Cemetery Bomb, burning us for 1000 points of damage. He can't do anything to prevent the battle damage, and thus he loses the duel once Cyber End Dragon inflicts 7500 points of piercing damage. Do you see what I mean now? Cyber End just seems like the best fit to end duels with because it stops the graveyard from being used as a resource, and Flip Effect simply won't activate if we can deal enough damage to end the duel in the battle. With everyone now satisfied with the duels with Zane, Rally invites us into the shack ahead, and we meet Yusei for the first time after spying on his degenerate browser history. Yusei's role in the story is quite bizarre, as he still hits the same story beats from the first season. but from the point of view of a side character, because we take his role of being the main character. Yusei is currently doing test rides before he attempts to leave Satellite through the pipeline system, wanting to recover the Stardust Dragon card that was stolen by the current Duel King, Jack Atlas. Zane has a flashback to the time where rider duels were first introduced, and we conveniently have his speed spell card placed in our field spell zone. Rally and Blitz want to help him leave the slums for the city, and Nervin meets up with us outside the base, having already found someone who's willing to sell a D-wheel to us for a relatively fair price. He's not kidding either. 1000 DP is the cost for 10 card packs, so that's gotta be like 20 quid in real life economics. You know what they say about deals that are too good to be true though, as once the D-wheel is delivered, we discover it's just a hunk of junk without an engine or a CPU. Nervin goes back to the supplier like a Karen to demand a manager, and Bro is held hostage as a result. Talk about bad customer service. Thus, it's down to Zane to rescue his new friend by playing a children's card game. Kuroe blocks the door to the base, and thus he is the first person to duel. Now Kuroe plays a spellcaster deck, revolving around the Dark Magician and its relative support cards. He plays quite a decent package of spellcaster monsters, from Breaker the Magical Warrior, a 1900 beater that can pop a back row, Injection Very Late, a weak monster that busts its own attack by 3000 points in the damage calculation for the cost of 2000 life points, 2 copies of Magician's Valkyria for the lock, Royal Magical Library that can draw a card once it has 3 spell counters, Skilled Dark Magician at 3 copies, another 1900 beater that can turbo straight into the Dark Magician when it has 3 spell counters, the Unhappy Maiden that will end the battle phase immediately if it's destroyed, and a classic card in the Dark Elf, a level 4 2000 beater that can only attack if he pays 1000 points in cost, and of course the playset of both Dark Magician and the Dark Magician Girl. For the spell traps, he's running the Dark Magic Curtain to turbo into his Dark Magician from the jump. Dark Magic Attack destroys all spell and trap cards on the field if he has a Dark Magician currently on board, and the rest of his spell package are filled with cards that either boost the attack of his spellcasters or burn us for direct damage. Thankfully, he isn't running Magical Dimension in this deck, which would be an amazing fit given how heavy he is on high level magicians. Kuroe has some decent traps in Magic Cylinder and Magic Drain. Where his deck falls apart is where it attempts to keep up with the Magician theming, opting for rather dogshit traps in Magical Hearts. And I guess Magician Circle is somewhat okay. He's definitely a step up from our previous opponents, with the amount of 1900 beaters he runs here. Those alone will give us a lot of trouble if we can't get into a fusion, but DNA Surgery will always be a lifeline for us against these more aggressive strategies. Anyway, we draw a creature swap for turn, setting our DNA Surgery and activating Different Dimension Capsule, searching for our Power Bond. We then normal summon Cyber Valley in attack position, ending the turn. Kuroe surprisingly only sets a single back row, and so we're left in this weird position where Valley is just a dead card right now. In the end phase, we activate our DNA Surgery, turning all monsters on the field to a machine type. We draw a second copy of DNA Surgery for turn before passing it back to him. Kuroe himself doesn't do anything either, and we draw Power Bond, making our Different Dimension Capsule target effectively useless right now. We pop his back row with Mystical Space Typhoon, and it ends up being Magicians Unite. We then tribute our Cyber Valley for our Cyber Dragon, dealing 2100 points of direct damage. I didn't really want to do this when Dark Magician can come online at any point, but the alternative is just to wait until he doesn't break, and that really isn't exciting either. I really want to see his opening hand at this point, as all he does yet again is set another back row. I didn't know this level of bricking was even possible. We draw Explore the Dragon for turn, summoning it to the field. Explore the Dragon can't actually deal damage, a trade-off for its destruction effect, but we can still deal a further 2100 points of direct damage with Cyber Dragon. He continues to pull our chain by setting yet another back row, and we draw Diffusion for turn, putting Kuroe on a 1 turn clock. It's here where I misplayed massively. Thinking we had game, I used Power Bond to fusion Chimeritic Overdragon to the field. This wipes away all of our own back row, including DNA Surgery. Overdragon at this point has 3200 attack points, leaving Kuroe with 600 once the attack resolves. I then used Defusion, thinking we can revive the Cyber Dragon because it was successfully fusion summoned. But it doesn't work the way I was thinking, and now our field is completely empty. I really need to brush up on the ruling of Defusion. This is the second time this run that I fumbled the bag like this. To make matters worse, he finally draws a monster, and a powerful one at that in Skilled Dark Magician, inflicting 1900 points of damage to us. We still have a massive lead, but with no monsters in hand, we might actually be cooked here. He also summons Dark Elf, but because his life points are lower than 1000, it can't attack. The top decking gods give us Pot of Greed for our draw, and we draw Cyber Phoenix off the back of it, summoning it in attack position. Cyber Phoenix has 1200 attack points, and both of Kuroe's monsters outrank it by over 700. This gives us game once we hand over Phoenix to Kuroe through creature swap, saving us from the embarrassment of a generational fumble. Once we enter the hideout, our next opponent in waiting is Ida. He's the Joey to Kuroe's Yugi in this game, sporting a dragon deck that focuses on turboing out the Red Eyes Black Dragon through cards like Red Eyes Black Chick. As a whole, this deck is super competent, running several 4-star beatsticks at 3 copies in the vein of Hunter Dragon, Luster Dragon and Spear Dragon, recruiters in Mass Dragon and Red Eyes Wyvern that can banish itself from the graveyard to special summon one Red Eyes monster currently in the grave. This can recycle either the original Red Eyes or its evolution in Red Eyes Darkness Dragon. He's even on Treeborn Frog and Dandelion, both monsters designed to be useful for Synchro Fodder or in this case, Tribute Summoning. His spell package is quite nutty for how early in the game he appears. Creature Swap to trade one of his weaker monsters for one of ours, 2 copies of Foolish Burial that can mill one monster of his choosing to the graveyard, and he has multiple targets where he just gets card advantage for using this with, in Treeborn Frog and Dandelion. And if he already has a Wyvern in the grave, he can mill a Red Ice monster as well in order to turbo it out really easily. 3 copies of My Body is a Shield allows him to negate the destruction of a card for the cost of 1500 life points. This was meta at one point in time during GOAT format. I don't think it will help him much here since we don't actually have many cards that destroys through card effects aside from maybe Explore the Dragon. Mystical Space Typhoon is here of course for removal. Soul Taker can pop one monster on our side of the field and then we gain 1000 life points. He runs this at 2 copies. Soul Exchange at 2 copies allows him to use one of our monsters as tribute fodder. Sure, he can't attack the turn this is used, but it's a viable way of taking out our bigger bodies whilst bringing his own to the board. And Stabbing Destruction, also at 2 copies, is Mystical Space Typhoon for the dragon typing with a burn element, popping 1 spell or trap as long as he has a dragon monster currently on the field, and we take 500 points of burn damage for the pleasure. Virtually running 3 MSTs puts cards like Future Fusion and Different Dimension Capsule at a huge risk. For his trap cards, he's running 2 copies of Birthright, Collar Haunted for vanilla monsters which will bring Red Eyes back from the grave whenever he needs it. Curse of Anubis switches all effective monsters into defense position and then reduces their defense points to 0. I think he has this in here to protect Speared Dragon, since it switches to defense itself as a drawback to being a level 4 beatstick with piercing. I guess he could also use this to bring our fusions to their knees and then hit over them with his vanilla monsters. Finally, 2 copies of Interdimensional Matter Transporter can send one of his monsters to the banished zone until the end phase. This will basically protect his monsters until he has the out. This pairs really well with the armed dragon monsters that Chaz is known for, since they evolve in the standby phase. Anyways, he goes first and starts things off relatively strong, by summoning Red Eyes Wyvern in attack position setting 2 face downs. We draw Proto Cyber Dragon for turn, summoning Cyber Valley in attack position and passing it back. Ida summons Dandelion in attack position, attempting to swing into Valley. Cyber Valley's effect activates and the battle is negated, plus we draw a card that turns out to be Creature Swap. On our following turn, we draw Power Bond, summoning Infernal Dragon in attack position. We could have swung into Dandelion for damage, but I really didn't want to provide the tokens just yet, so we hit into Wyvern and he takes 200 points of damage from the battle. In the end phase, when Infernal Dragon's effect destroys itself, Ida for some reason chains My Body is a Shield on activation. It doesn't save our Infernal Dragon, as funny as that would be, but he did just pay 1500 points for literally no reason. Ida summons Hunter Dragon and successfully swings in directly with both his monsters to deal 2000 points of damage. We draw our second copy of Creature Swap, setting our Armored Cybern and calling it a turn. Ida tributes both of his monsters to summon the Red Eyes Black Dragon. Dandelion's effect activates, summoning 2 fluff tokens to his side of the field. He now has the means to swing over our set monster and he does so, setting a card in the end phase. We draw Explore the Dragon using its destruction effect to get rid of Red Eyes for a turn. He didn't have My Body to counter this, but he can bring it back because of the Wyvern currently in the graveyard, which he does end up doing after passing his turn. We finally draw something good in Cyber Dragon and can finally mount an offense. Knowing he doesn't have any battle traps, we're safe to summon Proto Cyber Dragon in attack position. We can then use the Power Bond in our hand to fuse it with the actual Cyber Dragon we drew for turn, to fusion summon Cyber Twin Dragon, now sporting 5600 attack points down to the effect of Power Bond. Destroying Red Eyes inflicts a hefty 3200 points of damage to Ida, and we can take out one of his other fluff tokens, ensuring he won't be able to tribute for another 7-star monster anytime soon. We do take Power Bond's effect damage in the end phase, bringing our life points on par with Ida's. But somehow, I don't think that matters. All he can do is set a monster, and with that, we have game. We use Creature Swap to give him the Proto Cyber Dragon we drew for turn, and we swing into it with our Cyber Twin Dragon to deal the remaining damage. I think in general this is one of the biggest strengths of the Cyber Dragon archetype, being able to deal huge chunks of damage to end the duel before certain effects even have a chance to be activated. It essentially shuts down any form of interaction the opponent can interrupt with. Ida concedes defeat and allows us to delve further into the hideout. Little did I know the strongest duelist in the entire campaign will be waiting for us not long after. I'm not even joking either, meet Kameno, ladies and gentlemen. Kameno plays a deck he lovingly refers as the Lucky Turtle Shell. So what sort of deck is this? Deck Destruction. An absolute blinding version of it as well. This prick runs anything and everything to stall out the game, whilst rinsing our deck to the graveyard in the process. Every monster he has is a flip effect monster that will either bounce cards back to our hand in Penguin Soldier, or atomize our deck with the 3 copies of Shadow Scout, Needleworm, Morphing Jar 2 and Morphing Jar number 1. And because his entire strategy is to just ruin our day with flip effects, this shuts off our DNA Surgery since it's only applicable to monsters that are face up. If that wasn't bad enough, his Spell and Trap package is just pure degeneracy. 2 Book of Moons to either prevent our attacks or reset his own monsters. This gives Needleworm especially the potential to mill 25 cards from our deck. Card Destruction to further destroy our resources. DD Borderline straight up prevents us from attacking if he doesn't have a spell card in the grave. Limit Level Area B forces all level 4 monsters and above into defense position. And 3 copies of Messenger of Peace prevents any monsters with 1500 points or more from declaring an attack. And all he has to pay is a measly 100 points every standby phase for the cost. Nightmare Steel Cage at 3 prevents us attacking for 2 turns, 6 turns in total. Stumbling forces any monster that's summoned into defense position, summon us down further for a turn. Swords of Revealing Light prevents any battles for 3 turns. The Dark Door and Vengeful Bog Spirit respectively causes various summoning and battle sickness. The Shallow Grave forces both players to special summon a monster from the graveyard in face down defense position, which he runs at 3 copies, allowing Needleworm at the worst case scenario to mill 40 cards from our deck. That's the entire deck. Solemn Judgment, Wall of Revealing Light, Gravity Bind are all here to shut us out the game whilst he can grind it out to a deck out. The biggest elephant in the room is that he runs, not counting the cards that have a time limit, 9 spell and traps that can prevent us from declaring an attack altogether. We run 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. We have no other back row removal available to us. We can only pop 2 of these 9 cards. And with all the other time sensitive spells, we aren't beating this man. It's not happening. This duel took me 2 hours to even get a good run at. We were 1 turn away from winning. And he tops deck Messenger of Peace and we get decked out from there. Fuck this man. Why do you have to play something like this? Sure, you're a criminal, but do you actually hate fun? Where's the honour? We draw Infernal Dragon for turn, and we have to go all in immediately. I don't want to be dueling this utter wanker anymore, bro. Kameno sets a monster and activates the Dark Door, so now we can only attack with 1 monster from this point on. Yay! He then sets another back row. We draw Return Soul, setting it on the field. MST blows the Dark Door off the field. We then search for our second copy of MST through Different Dimension Castle because God knows we need it. Summoning Cyber Phoenix to the field, we attempt to swing over his set card with Infernal Dragon. Kameno counters with Book of Moon, setting Infernal Dragon. What an arsehole. We swing over his set monster with Phoenix right into Morphing Jar number 2, clearing our field and forcing the milling of our deck until we can summon another 2 monsters. We lose DNA Surgery and Defusion from this and end up with Cyber Valley and Proto Sidra face down on the field. Kameno humble T-sets and passes, although with him it's never humble, it's audacious bragging. We draw a second copy of Proto Cyber Dragon, summoning it after we flipped our other monsters face up. Even with the weak attack stats, we can hit over every set monster he has. We just need to try and win this as fast as humanly possible. He Books of Moons our first Proto Cyber Dragon, and our second swings over his Needleworm, and we are instantly punished with a milling of 5 cards from the top of our deck. Kameno then Shallow Graves us to recycle his Needleworm, and we bring back our Infernal Dragon, setting a back row that will no doubt insta-punish us the minute we try to attack again. We do get our second copy of Mystical Space Typhoon from Different Dimension Capsule, and it's a good thing we did, as this set card ends up being Wall of Revealing Light. With only Needleworm set though, we actually have game. Thanks to the 2 Proto Cyber Dragons on the field and the Power Bond in our hand, we can summon Cyber Twin Dragon with an enhanced 5600 attack points. Infernal Dragon easily hits over his Needleworm, and we hit this fool with a combined 12,000 points of damage thanks to Twin's double attack, or TKing him. Suck on them apples, bruv. I wish this man nothing but the worst in life. This prick has the audacity to claim in his lose dialogue that he has no luck, like he's not playing the most degenerate deck known to man. And we're free to continue on to a box puzzle. World Championship 2009 has quite a lot of mini games like this. These ones really aren't that difficult, but if you somehow mess it up, you can instantly retry with the Y button. We find Nervin knocked out unconscious deeper in the warehouse. He apologises profusely, which he should after what we just went through, and Yusei gives us one of his old engines as a thanks for saving his friend. All we need now is a CPU, and we can follow Yusei's lead to enter Neo Domino City. A few days go by and Raleigh suddenly bursts in with a CPU he apparently found laid around amidst some trash. It works perfectly, and so we take our D-Wheel to the old highway for a test drive. The coolest aspect of the 5D's World Championship games is that they are the truest representation of what made the 5D show so special. Yes, the Tag Force games are far more luxurious in presentation, music and gameplay, but due to its dating sim formula, the entire game is restricted to the tag duel and slice of life format. You don't have the opportunity for your character to grow or have a D-Wheel or even participate in riding duels. Where the World Championship games lacks in the presentation department, it excels in providing the players the true experience of 5Ds. Not only can we participate in races later on, we also have to outrun the cops in certain moments in the story. Right now the bike controls like utter dog shit, but you can upgrade various aspects of it to increase its performance. From the frame of the D-Wheel to the CPU, engine, all of the works. None of this is mandatory but will be required if you actually plan on tackling the optional race content the game has to offer. I kinda wish we got these other gameplay styles in the PSP games as well. The fact that they were able to cram all of this into a DS title of all things is quite impressive. Bad driving aside, the test run is a massive success, and so we return to the hideout to meet with the others. It's not long until we run into yet more trouble, this time with security who tracked us down via Raleigh's marker. A tag of sorts imprinted into a chip on the wearer's face, used to discriminate against the poor in the satellite. Raleigh, in fact, didn't find the CPU laying about in some trash, he stole the thing. Thus, we have to lead security away with our D-Wheel and outrun Officer Trudge on the old highway. The concept of this is way more exciting than the execution. I thought our D-Wheel was utter buns, but just look at the gap we're leading on him here. No wonder he could never catch up with you, sir. It's here where I realise our new friend group is nothing but trouble. We return to the hideout to see a shooked up Blitz who goes on to explain both Tank and Nervin went to the power plant for some reason and got tangled up with a guy called Lenny. The plant is west of where we just came from, so we head there immediately. After some more block pushing shenanigans, we run into Lug, who promises to let us through if we defeat him in a duel. Every member of this group plays aggressive strategies, and Lug here pilots every primary school's favourite playground strategy, water attributes. His deck package contains monsters that have additional effects when the Umi field spell is placed on the field, ranging from being able to attack directly regardless of our board, and even to sacrifice the Umi field spell to board wipe the entire field. Aside from that, he just has a lot of good stuff water monsters in general. From the Recruiter Mother Grizzly run out 3 copies to keep a body on the board for tribute summoning, and even 2 copies of Morbius the Frost Monarch, and 1 tribute water monster that can destroy 2 spell or trap cards on summon. He pairs all of this with a legendary Ocean Field spell, which is considered to be Umi when on the field. Above that, it also provides a flat 200 point increase to all water attribute monsters, and the even scarier effect reduces the level of all water attribute monsters on the field and in the hand by 1. This makes it far easier for him to get out the boss monster of the deck, the 7-star Livia Dragon Daedalus, which will board wipe the entire field by sacrificing Umi, or in this case, Legendary Ocean. Thanks to the effects of this field spell, this automatically becomes a 1 tribute monster, rather than the 2 it usually is, and with the amount of recruiters and otherwise useful floaters he uses to keep fodder on the board, this has a very real chance of making an impact in the duel. The rest of his deck is just filled with really good cards that will put the pressure on us for a potential OTK. Creature Swap to take our stronger monsters, although it's quite useless in this deck because he has a lot of really powerful monsters that are essentially free anyway. Hammer Shot destroys the strongest monster on the field. Could be useful if we get into a Cyber End Dragon. Heavy Storm of course destroys all back row. Lightning Vortex is essentially Raigeki with a cost. And Mystical Space Typhoon is here for further back row removal. 3 copies of Salvage recovers 2 water attribute monsters from the grave back to his hand, providing the deck a ton of versatility, and the lone copy of Terraforming can directly search into his field spell. For the trap lineup, he's running a package focusing on pure negation. Magic Jammer will negate a spell card we try to play by discarding a card. 7 Tools of the Bandit negates a trap for the cost of 1000 life points. Spell Shield Type B at 2 copies can both negate a spell that targets a monster for completely free, or negate any spell for the cost of discarding a spell card. Torrential Tribute is a free board wipe for when things get dicey, and the 2 copies of Tornado Wall reduces all battle damage he takes to 0 as long as he has Ume, or in this case, a Legendary Ocean on the field. He possesses all of the tools to completely shut us down, but due to how aggressive this deck is, he is open to getting washed away by DNA Surgery, as he will rarely be setting monsters himself. From the jump, Lug activates his Legendary Ocean and setting another back row for good measure. We draw Cyber Phoenix, and since the Cyber Dragon in our hand is pretty much dead right now, we go into Infernal Dragon, swinging in for 2k of damage. The face down isn't Tornado Wall, so it is successful, and Infernal is destroyed in the end phase. It's at this point I realise Lug somehow braked as he passes his turn without doing anything. Drawing our second copy of Defusion, we summon Cyber Phoenix this time around and swing in for a further 1200 points of direct damage. Bro does absolutely nothing again, and this gives us game. Drawing Power Bond for turn, we've used our 3 machine monsters into Chimeritic Overdragon. Thanks to Power Bond, this doubles his attack from 2400 to 4800, the exact amount of points he has left to sweep the game. We clear yet another layer of block puzzles, encountering Tank being held hostage by Larry. Larry for a Brokey plays an incredibly powerful beatdown strategy centered around the field spell, Mausoleum of the Emperor, a card that substitutes a tribute requirement for the cost of 1000 life points per tribute. Larry uses this to cheese out his extremely powerful arsenal of 8-star and above monsters at a measly 2 to 3000 life points a pop, which does sound like a lot until you realise he's able to reduce the opponent's life points extremely quickly as well. The field spell is receptacle, so we could use it to get our Cyber Dragons on the board, for example. For the monsters, he's running nothing but good stuff. 2 copies of Ancient Gear Golem for the piercing damage, Dandelion for the tokens, 2 copies of Doom Caliber Knight, which is a 1900 beta with the mandatory effect of negating a monster effect and destroying it, 3 copies of Evil Hero Militias also for the piercing damage, Giant Germ at 3 for the burn and recruiter properties, 2 Goblin attack forces, he's even running Gauze. Marshmallow is here for the hard wall, Night Assailant as spot removal, and Phantom Chaos can banish 1 effect monster from his graveyard, and this card will gain the stats of the chosen card. The Calculator is a level 2 effect monster that gains 300 points times the combined levels of every single monster on his side of the field. Considering his deck is filled with 8-star and above monsters, this can spiral out of control real quickly. Larry even has a Wicked God from the Yu-Gi-Oh! R manga in the Wicked Dread route. Terrifying stuff all around. His spell traps are just as formidable. As mentioned before, he's running 3 copies of Mausoleum of the Emperor as a centerpiece of the deck. 1 copy of Fires of Doomsday, which summons 2 tokens that can be then used as tribute fodder. He plays 2 copies of Stray Lands for the exact same purpose, which can activate during our turn to completely get around the card's negative side effect of not being able to summon a monster the turn it's activated. 2 copies of Lightning Vortex wipes our board away for an easy OTK, Swords of Revealing Light to stall for 3 turns, 2 copies of Terraforming to directly search into his field spell, and 3 copies of Royal Decree which negates all other track cards on the field. He's using this to negate the likes of Mirror Force, things that could wipe away his daunting board, but this also shuts off our own strategy in DNA Surgery, so we gotta be careful. Turn 1 immediately goes downhill as Larry searches directly for Mausoleum with Terraforming, summoning Malicious Edge at the cost of 2000 life points. We draw Call of the Haunted, setting it face down alongside DNA Surgery. To ensure we survive the turn, I set Proto Cyber Dragon. Probably a mistake here given Malicious does have piercing, but I wanted to play around the potential Lightning Vortex here. I'm kind of hoping he goes all in on his next turn. As long as he doesn't set Royal Decree, we potentially have game. Larry does not go all in, summoning Doom Caliber Knight, swinging over our Proto Cyber Dragon with Malicious. I do chain the DNA Surgery just to get it online, but we do take 3900 points of damage from the succeeding battles. Without a set card, we are free to try and take control of the duel, destroy Mausoleum with the MST we drew for turn just for the memes. We revive our Proto Cyber Dragon with Call of the Haunted and contact fuse it with Larry's 2 monsters to summon our Chimeric Fortress Dragon sitting at 3,000 attack points. We then revive his Malicious Edge from the graveyard with our Monster Reborn, attacking directly for 5,600 points of direct damage. Because he is now virtually under the 1k requirement for Mausoleum, he can no longer cheese out his monsters, and his deck is virtually one massive brick at this point. All he can do is set up a defense with a set monster and stray lambs. But that doesn't matter thanks to Malicious's piercing effect, winning us the duel on the following turn. Having rescued Tank, we try and escape, only for the leader Lenny to show up, so we gotta duel him as well. Lenny here is originally from the city, who was sent to Satellite for punishment for his crimes that they don't specify. He continues to treat the residents of Satellite in the way the rest of the city folk do, despite being trapped in the exact same situation now. Larry plays a beatdown insect deck, revolved around his ace card, Doomdozer, a free 2800 attacker that mills the top card from our deck if he's successful in inflicting battle damage, and is special summoned to the field by banishing 2 insect monsters from the graveyard. Naturally, his deck is built to fill the grave with insects in order to sober out the 3 copies of Dozer, all the while getting value from filling the graveyard through draw effects, recruit effects, and gaining tokens. He plays Magical Merchant that mills the deck until he finds a spell or trap to add to his hand, another great way to fill the grave with the required insects. Spot removal in Man-Eater Bug, the Gemini monster Gigaplant at 1 copy, which would be far scarier if he actually played any more plant monsters to utilise its effects, and 1 copy of the Ultimate Insects level 5 and 7. At first I was confused as to why these were even here, since he doesn't play at level 3 to evolve into them. But he gets around this with 3 copies of Insect Imitation, a spell card that allows you to tribute a monster and then you can summon an insect that is 1 level above the fodder used as the cost. So he can just pair this with one of his level 4 monsters to go right into level 5. He plays 3 copies of Creature Swap to switch out strong monsters for his weak insects, and since they return to his graveyard, this card has no downside to it whatsoever. Heavy Storm and Reborn are power spells that you'd want in any deck. MST for spot removal, Shield Crush destroys any defense position monster regardless of whether it's face down or not, and Multiplication of Ants allows him to tribute 1 insect monster, filling his graveyard further, in exchange for 2 ant tokens. These can't be used as tribute, so they're here solely to feed the grave for Doomdozer with the added benefit of providing a wall. For the traps, he runs a lone copy of Compulsory Evacuation Device, which bounces a monster back to the hand. You can use this to send our fusions back to the extra deck. 2 copies of Dimensional Prison can stop 1 attack and banish the attacking monster, and 2 copies of Destruction Jammer will negate an effect that tries to destroy a monster. I'm low-key hoping he mills the Doomdozers via the Magical Merchant, as they can't be special summoned any other way. I'm not confident with the odds of that happening though. We have the chance to go second here and we take it. I want to give him the best opportunity to commit early on so we can then sweep the field with Fortress Dragon if possible. Lenny sets a monster and immediately wastes a copy of Insect Imitation to special summon an insect that is 1 star higher than the set card. The set card is level 1, so he has no choice but to special summon Man-Eater Bug off the effect, wasting his lone copy effectively. He then banishes the insect from the grave to special summon the 1900 beta Aztec Pede, the Worm Warrior, in attack position. Since he has a monster on his side of the field, we can special summon Cyber Dragon for free. We then summon Cyber Phoenix and set our 2 track cards in Return Soul alongside Damage Pulverizer. Cyber Dragon swings over Aztec, inflicting 200 points of damage, and Phoenix hits over the Man-Eater Bug. This does put us in Doomdozer range once we end our turn. Lenny wipes away our back row with Heavy Storm, setting another monster fortunately, not drawing into one of the 3 copies of Dozer. We draw Cyber Valley, summoning Proto Cyber Dragon to the field. Cyber Dragon swings over his set Magical Merchant and the latter's effect resolves, ripping Creature Swap off the top. We successfully swing in for an additional 3300 points of damage. Even if he uses Creature Swap at this point, we can choose whatever monster we give him, so he isn't going to get much value from that card. Lenny sets a monster and uses his second copy of Insect Imitation to special summon Cross Sword Beetle. He also swing over the Cyber Phoenix and we take 600 points of damage for the trouble, but we do get to draw a card as per the effect of Phoenix. I would have targeted the Proto Cyber Dragon personally. Not only would it inflict more damage and we wouldn't get a draw from the destruction, if we end up top decking a copy of Power Bond, this duel is pretty much done. We get DNA Surgery from Phoenix and draw Monster Reborn for turn. We use Reborn to revive the Cyber Phoenix from the graveyard, summoning Cyber Valley for our normal summon. Thanks to limiter removal in hand, we have game. Contact fusing into Fortress Dragon with our 3 monsters leaves us with a 3000 point beat stake. But since we can use Proto Cyber Dragon in the place of our original Cyber Dragon, we swing into his remaining monster and attack directly for over 8000 points of damage. Lenny makes things right with us by letting us know about the port that he can take a ferry over to the city, and we go to investigate it with Tank just to see how viable it will actually be. Because we need a travel permit to reach the city by boat, Zane decides to go the route Yusei did and trespass through the pipeline. Tank sets us up on Yusei's riding simulator and it's nothing too difficult. One lap around the pipeline. They give us 3 minutes, but even with our slow ass D-wheel, you can easily pass it in half the time. After the test run, we're forced into 2 rematches, both with Raleigh and Nervin, as a thank you for all of their help. We're not going to go over these as they pilot the exact same decks as before, and we obliterate them just as seamlessly anyway. With the preparations complete, we zoom off towards the pipeline, and Officer Trudge appears hot on pursuit, having identified our D-wheel. No riding duel here or anything, just another chase sequence through the pipeline itself. These would actually be a lot more fun, you know, if he was actually fast, but we easily shake him off reaching the city, only to be ambushed by sector security on the other side, confiscating both our deck and D-wheel, shipping our arse off to the penitentiary. We spend 6 months doing hard time, until they eventually realise that it's the legendary duelist Hell Kaiser, and not some poor broke born in the slums. They still won't give us our deck or D-wheel back though, and after we drown our sorrows at the nearest bar, all the while doing some duel puzzles to prove we aren't washed, the jack of all trades, known as Blister, introduces himself, along with a plan to get our stolen shit back from the security vaults. This leads to an extremely jank stealth section across multiple layers of the building to grab each ID card for both the D-wheel vault and the card vault. It's essentially Metal Gear Solid with the execution of Sonic 06. There's no distance range for you to tell how far the guards can notice you from. They will stop you even if you're behind something to obstruct their view. And later on, you gotta do this on a timer, and if you're discovered midway through, that's right, you gotta do that timer section all over again. Seriously, I hate these sections. I wish they'd never come back, but they still use them in the next 2 World Championship games for some baffling reason. We eventually do get our stuff back though, and outrun Trudge for the 3rd time. You'd think at this point they would either fire him for being incompetent, or upgrade his stuff so he actually has a shot of catching us. Thanks to the aid of the twins Rua and Ruka, we lose the predatory officer and are able to catch our breath for a moment. No memory shenanigans this time around. Rua simply wants to duel, and that's the least we owe the kid, right? In spite of playing the Morphtronic archetype, a list of rather weak machine monsters whose game plan is to swarm the field with the other Morphtronics via the effect of Stealth On, with each individual monster having their own unique effects when other cards of the archetype are also present on the field, from getting a flat stat buff to being able to attack twice per battle phase, or even to attack directly. This variation really isn't that bad. He's playing Stealth On and the rest of the Morphtronics at the relevant ratios, but Rua then fills out the deck with some pretty great cards. Giant Rat as a recruiter to turbo into Stealth On, or any of the other Earth attribute Morphtronic monsters, and Cyber Dragon is here as Rua plays a decent Cyber Dragon fusion package himself, running both Chimeritic Overdragon alongside Chimeritic Fortress Dragon. For the spells, he's on 3 copies of Creature Swap, Heavy Storm for the removal, Limiter Removal to double the attack of his machine monsters and go for an OTK, Morphtronic Accelerator at 3 copies allows him to destroy a card on the field for the cost of returning a Morphtronic to the hand. He runs around 20 of those monsters, so this card in particular is always going to be online. The Morphtronic Map Field spell at 2 copies further boosts the archetype's attack points. Mystical Space Typhoon, of course, for more removal. Overload Fusion to facilitate the fusion plate into Chimeritic Overdragon. And last but certainly not least, United We Stand. For the traps, he's running the obligatory Mirror Force and Torrential Tribute, 2 copies of Morphtronic Monitron, and 2 copies of Morphtronic Force Field. This handy trap will negate the effect of a spell or trap that would otherwise destroy a Morphtronic monster, and then he can add 1 Morphtronic to the hand from the deck as a bonus. Since Rua is on a full-on machine package, Chimeritic Fortress Dragon will always be online for the pair of us. It's simply going to come down to who draws into Cyber Dragon first. Rua starts things off by activating his Morphtronic Map Field spell, setting a further back row to end his turn. We draw Proto Cyber Dragon for turn, destroying Rua's set Torrential Tribute with Mystical Space Typhoon. We then swing for 1100 points of damage with Proto Cyber Dragon ending the turn. Rua activates Morphtronic Accelerator, returning Stealth On to the deck and destroys our Proto Cyber Dragon. Giant Rat is summoned in attack position and he swings in for 1400 points. In response, we draw Inferno Dragon and summon Exploder Dragon to the field. Exploder crashes into Giant Rat, destroying it via its effect, and since the effect doesn't count as battle, he doesn't get the value from the Recruiter effect either. It seems as if he's bricked from this stage, only set in a back row, and we take the opportunity for direct damage by summoning Infernal Dragon, which is successful. Rua finally summons a machine monster in Selphon, rolling a 6. Through its effect to search the top 6 cards of the deck, and special summon a Mortronic monster that fits the requirements. Mortronic Cameraman fits the bill, and we take 900 points of damage from the successive attacks. And ladies and gentlemen, that's game. Since he has monsters on the field, we can special summon our Cyber Dragon, and then revive our Proto Cyber Dragon from the grave with Monster Reborn. Contacting our Proto with his 2 machine monsters gives us a 3000 point Chimera tech, and we hit in for lethal. Having bonded as duelists, the twins go on to explain that they're in this sketchy part of the city to go and duel the witch in the underground. A duelist that is said to have bizarre powers that can turn duel monsters into real beasts. Naturally, with Zane being quite familiar with the sport of underground dueling, decides to escort the pair just in case they run into some trouble. It's here that we hear the lowest quality scream known to man. And find an unconscious duelist before this rather attractive young woman. She recognises the mark that randomly appears on our arm, and we are forced to duel the psychic duelist, or should I say psycho duelist at this point, because seriously, she's nuts. Aki Azayui runs 2 decks in this game, and both are just as frightening as the other. She plays plants, an aggressive strategy at this point in the game, with the means of turboing into Titanial Princess of Camellias, a 2800 point plant monster that will outright negate an effect that targets a monster. She's able to get to this and all other good plants through the effect of Lawn Fire Blossom, a level 2 unimpressive stat-wise plant monster that can sacrifice itself to immediately summon a plant monster from the deck regardless of its stat lines. She runs this in particular at 3 copies, so it's bound to come up. Her other monsters are just generally really well rounded as well. The Gemini monster Giga Plant can special summon plant monsters directly from the hand, once you commit your second normal summon to it. Gigantic Cephalotus is an 1800 point beta that gains 200 points for every plant monster in the graveyard, giving it the potential to become quite beefy as the duel draws on. Inmator can draw 2 cards from the deck if we target a plant monster with an effect whilst it's on the field. Copy Plant, the tuner monster, can copy a level of an existing plant monster on the field. Very flexible to go into a single place, and of course her Black Rose Dragon can nuke the field on summon, or reduce the attack points of one of our monsters to 0 by banishing a plant monster. She thankfully only runs her race at 1 copy. The second layer of her strategy is control, through the effects of a very powerful field spell known as Black Garden. This is basically DNA Surgery and Shrink mixed into 1 card, as all monsters on the field become plant types, and every other monster that's summoned after the activation has their attack start halved as well. Every time a monster is summoned on the field, the opposing player will receive a plant token, an 800 attack point 2-star token. Whilst this is reciprocal, it's useless for us as we don't play synchros to use said tokens as materials, whilst for her it's used to extend those potential plays. So what we essentially have here is that she wants to get to Titanial on the field before the activation of Black Garden, and from that point on she's virtually indestructible, as we'll have no way to hit over a 2800 point monster, when every monster we can even summon has their attack points automatically halved. Because of the DNA Surgery effects of Black Garden, she also has a package that will provide advantage because of the fact she plays exclusively plant monsters at that point. Mark of the Rose at 2 copies is essentially Snatch Steal for plants, allowing her to take one of our monsters at the cost of banishing a plant monster from the graveyard. Miracle Fertilizer at 2 copies can special summon a plant from the graveyard at the cost of losing the normal and special summons for the turn. This gives Titanial in particular disgusting staying power, as you can just keep bringing it back due to the effect of this being a continuous spell. Mystical Space Typhoon at 1 copy for removal, and the World's Tree at 3 copies, gains a flower token every time a plant monster is destroyed on either player's field. It then gains additional effects depending on the amount of tokens it currently has, ranging from boosting the attack of a plant monster for the turn, popping a card on the field, or special summoning a plant monster from the graveyard. Because of Black Garden, this can gain a ton of counters, as every time one of our monsters or a token is destroyed, it just serves to advance her game state. Her trap lineup is just as insane. 2 copies of Solemn Judgment for the absolute negate, 1 copy of Dust Tornado for removal, and 2 copies of Wall of Thorns is Mirror Force for the typing, destroying all of our attacking monsters as long as she controls a plant monster the turn this card is activated. 3 copies of Plant Food Chain equips our monster to give it 500 points, and if this card is destroyed, she can then special summon yet another plant monster from the graveyard. I can see this going wrong for us extremely quickly, down to just how she can theoretically just keep reviving her boss monster over and over again. We only have 2 copies of MST as well, so it's not like we can outlast the Black Gardens either. We can somewhat counter it with our DNA surgery to turn the board into machine type monsters, but then she can just reflip it anyways by activating another Black Garden after the fact. This isn't going to be easy. Aki starts off with Miracle Fertilizer, setting an additional back row and a monster. No Lone Fire Blossom so far, so that's a good sign. We draw Infernal Dragon for turn and forced to make a risky decision from the beginning. We have both Defusion and Future Fusion in hand, so what I decided in the face of a potential removal card of Soul and Judgment is to mill our 3 Cyber Dragons from the deck to the grave. If we can summon Cyber End Dragon before the activation of Black Garden, this gives us a huge advantage. We then have the choice to defuse later on to revive our 3 Cyber Dragons directly, but this can only happen if Future Fusion fully resolves. This is a massive gamble so early on, so let's see if it pays off. We then set Damage Pulverizer and summon Cyber Valley in attack mode. We don't want to lose Infernal per its effect this early on. It can serve as the backup in case our initial risk doesn't pay off. Aki summons Imato in attack position, flipping her Natura Rose Whip face up, shooting them together to synchro summon her Queen of Thorns. She attempts to swing and Valley's effect activates, negating the battle and drawing us a card in return soul. Our Gambit is thoroughly countered as she activates Black Garden, meaning Cyber End Dragon, even if it is summoned, won't be strong enough to take out the Queen of Thorns. We draw yet another copy of Return Soul, setting them both. Just to have something on the board, we summon Infernal Dragon and Queen of Thorns effect burns us for 1000 life points. She then gets a Rose token per the effect of Black Garden. In order to at least keep her board from growing out of hand, we try to swing it into a Rose token only to be countered by Wall of Thorns. I'm not too mad at this as Infernal would have been destroyed regardless, and at least we get a copy of one of her stronger track cards out of the way. This gives a clear board to attack us though, which she does after tribute summoning her Rose token for Gigaplant. Gigaplant swings over our token, inflicting 400 points of damage, and we take a further 2200 from Queen of Thorns' direct attack. We draw DNA Surgery for turn, just when we needed it the most, and Future Fusion resolves, summoning our weakest Cyber End Dragon. We have no other choice but to use the limited removal in hand, restoring Cyber End Dragon to its former glory to swing over Queen of Thorns. This is successful and she takes 1800 points of damage. Because Cyber End will now be destroyed in the end phase, we use Defusion, which revives our original 3 Cyber Dragons. This play was a hunch, wondering if the Cyber Dragons would remain on the field, and since they were never affected by limited removal in the first place. And that's how this interaction works, thank God for that as well. Just like that, the tides of the duel swings in our favour for the first time. As long as one of our 3 Cyber Dragons survive the next turn, and with DNA Surgery now in the back row, we have the opportunity to counter her Black Garden for good. Aki uses the effect of Miracle Fertilizer to revive her Queen of Thorns, this time sitting at a more manageable 1100 points itself because of the effect of Black Garden. This ensures one Cyber Dragon remains on the field after we take 200 points of damage from the next 2 battles. In the end phase, we activate our Return Soul to return the 2 Cyber Dragons back to the deck, whilst DNA Surgery shifts the monster types of the field from plant to machine type. We must have cheated here and not shuffled the deck, as Cyber Dragon is the card we top deck, contact fusing her 2 monsters with Sidra to fusion summon Chimeritic Fortress Dragon. We couldn't use the token for some reason, but that hardly matters. We crash our token into hers and hit her for 1100 points of direct damage with Chimeritic, evening our life points. Aki activates the World Tree, a card that is now useless because the field is exclusively machine type, and sets a monster. We draw Power Bond for turn, swinging over a Dandelion which gives her 2 fluff tokens, immediately getting rid of one of them with the Rose token on our side of the field. From this point on, we're effectively in a positive game state, as every monster she summons now isn't able to get anywhere close to Fortress Dragon's 1500 attack stat, and we get more tokens for every monster she summons. Her gigantic Cephalotus swings into one of our tokens, and we take a poverty amount of damage from the battle. We draw Monster Reborn for turn and revive the Cyber Dragon in the graveyard, giving us yet another opportunity to wipe her board clear by fusion summoning a second Chimeritic. Because the tokens can't be used as material, this Fortress Dragon only stands at 1000 attack points, but that is still more than anything Aki can muster right now, and so we wipe her remaining monsters away. On the following turn, Aki sets a monster and the back row, and we draw Cyber Phoenix for turn, setting it as insurance. Our Chimeritics are able to clear the field once again and hit for 1000 points of damage, effectively putting Aki on a clock. Like all good Yu-Gi-Oh! AI, Aki cheats and top decks Lone Fire Blossom of all cards. She summons it in attack position and does nothing. This very move handles the game, as she has nothing to prevent us from destroying it with our Rose token and swinging in for lethal. At the time, I couldn't figure out why she didn't activate the effect of Lone Fire Blossom. It wasn't until that very evening when I was taking a dump, it came to me. Lone Fire Blossom has to tribute a plant-type monster to use its effect, which includes itself. But DNA Surgery counteracted this, locking a key from her Titanial. I don't think it would have mattered at this point anyway, as Titanial itself would only have 1400 points with Black Garden still on the field, so our first Chimeric Fortress Dragon will still outmatch it by 100 points. Thank God we were playing the one deck in GX tailor-made to counter plants. What are the chances? I deflated a key spares us for the time being, and we escort the young twins out of the hellscape. No idea what happened to the man she dueled before though, he's probably cooked. Wandering around aimlessly, we run into Blister again, who was heading to the D-Wheel shop for some parts. The twins show up for a second time, demanding another duel, and this becomes our introduction to tag dueling. This is optional in the sense that it doesn't matter whether we win or lose, and the twins smoke us here. Rua opened up with the God Hand, and I fully put all the responsibility on Blister. This opens the game up quite a bit, as we need to find a partner for the tag duel tournament. You can ask literally anyone in the hub world as long as you defeat them in a duel first. And so, having prior knowledge of the game, I thought I would be smart and ask the Lightsworn user Graton to be our partner. It's such a powerful archetype at this point in the card game, it just seemed like a no-brainer, and it synergized with our Cyber Dragons being a light attribute focused deck. What I fail to understand is that the AI in this game for some reason becomes worse relative to the strength of the deck they pilot. I can't confirm that 100%, but it sure as hell feels like that. Each round of this tournament took several attempts. Thankfully we can save in between each round, otherwise this would have been impossible. Every single defeat could be attributed to a dumbass misplay by Graton. From not using cards at the right time, being uber aggressive and running right into a Mirror Force, you name the stipulation and this man probably ended up doing it. The tournament itself is a 3-round affair. We start off against a generic pair of duelists, face off against Blister and Boltana in the semis to eventually reach the finals in our rematch against the twins. Duel 1, we come into the pure degeneracy that is Gene and Tail. Pause, I didn't mean it like that. Anyway, Gene and Tail play a combination of burn/control and lockdown respectively. Gene's entire deck is filled with the usual suspects you'd expect, in Desqualler and Marshmelon. His deck entirely flips from this point, comprising of monsters that bounce cards back to their hand through several conditions. Golem Sentry, Penguin Soldier, Legendary Jiu-Jitsu Master, Grand Mole, and even a Monarch in Riser. This synergizes with his Chain Burn spell card that forces each player to pay 500 life points each time they summon a monster. He runs this at 3 copies, so his entire strategy is to force cards back to our hand, so then we have to pay the cost to resummon them. The rest of his spell cards are a package to prevent us from attacking whilst he builds his board state. Limit Level Area B, Messenger of Peace, Swords of Revealing Light, they're all accounted for here. He of course runs the staples in Reborn, MST, Mirror Force and Torrential Tribute. Gravity Bind further locks us down and prevents any further plays we could potentially have. Ceasefire flips all monsters on the field face up and burns us for 500 times every effect monster. Both he and I play nothing but effect monsters, so this could burn us for heavy damage under the right board state. And our Drama Trio will flood our field with 3 tokens that will burn us for 300 points each on destruction. And they essentially limit our monster zones as they can't be tributed either, and we don't play synchros to cheese them off the field that way. Finally, Secret Barrel at 2 copies burns us for 200 points times the amount of cards we control on the field and in the hand. With his whole game plan revolving around bouncing the cards we play back to the hand, this could easily burn us for an easy 2000 points of damage. Overall, it's pure degeneracy, especially when this sort of deck naturally counters our DNA Surgery strategy. Tail on the other hand is playing a Wind/Dark attribute deck to further oppress our game state whilst they swing in with their heavy beaters. Armageddon Knight at 3 copies is used to mill a Dark to the graveyard for the special summoning requirements of his boss monster, Dark Simorg. This behemoth is a 2700 beater that can be special summoned by removing both a Dark and Wind attribute monster from the graveyard. Its effect makes it so we cannot set cards, this includes traps, and even monsters, so we're pretty much the victim of this thing as it hits us for damage over and over. Since it's a winged beast monster, it can also synergize with a lone copy of Icarus Attack, as well to pop 2 cards on the field, and then revive itself if Tail has both a Dark and Wind attribute monster in hand to discard as the cost. Doom Caliber Knight, as stated before, can mandatorily negate a monster effect by tributing itself. It also sits at a hefty 1900 attack and 3 copies. Slate Warrior, another 1900 beater at 3 copies, will reduce the attack points of the monster that destroys it by 500, making it even harder to get over its stronger beaters even if we do get our fusions on the board. Sanguine of course is here with the switches. Rise of the Storm Monarch for the 3 bounce back to the deck, Lady Ninja Yai can clear our back row by discarding a wind attribute monster, and Snipe Hunter of course can pop a card as long as it rolls anything other than a 1 or a 6. And to wrap up the monster package, Wind Sage Valkos returns any monster it destroys to the top of the deck, creating an endless loop of bricking if we can't afford to take another direct attack. His spell package plays all of the power spells including Ghoul Sarcophagus at 1 copy. As for the traps, he plays multiple copies of cards that outright remove a card in Bottomless Trap Hole, Dostinado and Icarus Attack, negations in Dark Bribe and Divine Wrath, and Anti-Spell Fragrance at 3 copies forces both players to set a spell before they can activate it. If he's able to resolve this whilst Dark Samorg is on the field, this will lock us out of our spell cards entirely for the remainder of the duel, as we wouldn't be able to set anything under its oppressive effect. He finally plays a lone copy of both Mirror Force and Torrential Tribute because, of course he does. You see what I mean now, right? This is why I sought out the Lightsworn user thinking he could just murk everything with Judgment Dragon. We were bamboozled. The tag dueling in this game is also really dumb. Whilst by and large it does follow the Tag Force rule set, the turn order is buggered up. If you choose to go first, as in the team order, you, the player, will be the first one to make a move. Seems simple enough, right? So what happens if you choose to go second? Well, you go last. It no longer just corresponds to the team turns order, it also counts your placement within your own team. This buggered up so many duels where I choose to go second thinking we would go third, only to have the game plan completely shaken up. Jean starts the duel by setting a monster and 2 face downs, activating Chain Boon to get the burn strategy underway, adding a 500 point cost for anything pertaining to playing a card on the field. Graton pays the 500 to activate Reinforcement of the Army, and Jean negates it with Dark Bribe. We do get an extra card due to its effect though, and what a rip from the top, Heavy Storm. This will be the final 500 points we'll have to pay, as Heavy Storm wipes the field of both Chain Energy and the set Mystical Space Typhoon. Foolish Burial mills Wolf to the graveyard, and it special summons itself to the field per its effect. Finally, he tributes Wolf to summon Celestia from the hand. Since the Lightsworn monster was used as the tribute, Celestia can destroy up to 2 cards on the field, and thus, Jean's Jujutsu Master is destroyed. Celestia then hits him for 2300, giving us the lead. Graton ends his turn by setting both Dark Bribe and Sullen Judgment, so we're in safe hands at this point. Tail attempts the Heavy Storm but is negated thanks to the effect of Dark Bribe, so the only thing he can do is set a monster and another 2 back row. Anti-Spell Fragrance is activated in our standby phase, so we're unable to play the Different Dimension Castle immediately. I didn't Sullen Judgment here because Dark Samorg just isn't on the field at the moment, and the negation of Judgment can still be used for any other immediate threat. We set the Different Dimensional Capsule for the time being, summoning Infernal Dragon to swing over the set monster. It ends up being Snipe Hunter, so I'm confused why he just wouldn't try and use its discard effect to pop our board in this instance, but we are free to swing directly for an additional 2300. In the end phase, Tail reveals his final face down card, Dust Tornado, and he targets Different Dimension Castle, so we let it go in this instance. Infernal Dragon self-destructs as per its effect. Jean now has to go big or go home, and that he does, summoning Neospace and Grand Mole. The AI cheating aside, we had quite a lofty decision to make. We could negate this summon and Mole with Judgment, but that would leave Celestia vulnerable to any traps he might set in the end phase. We know Graton holds Monster Reborn, which he can use to bring back Wolf, and even if he didn't, we're currently sitting on 2 Cyber Dragons. With all of the safety plans in order, Judgment just feels more useful as a counter to any trap here, and so we let the Grand Mole resolve. Jean does set a trap in the end phase as predicted. Graton draws into another Celestia and sets the Monster Reborn. Tail summons Doom Caliber Knight, and Graton's AI being a little too trigger happy, uses Judgment to negate his summon like an idiot. Tail doesn't set anything further, but it doesn't matter. Graton has just turned our Cyber Dragons offline by doing this. And if they do have something to counter the Monster Reborn, it puts us in a very dangerous position. As long as we play this right, we do have game, so instead of reviving one of our monsters, I instead revive the Snipe Hunter from their graveyard. I only want to pop the face down, and so we have 5 goals that roll in at 2, 3, 4 or 5. We pitch Cyber Phoenix and roll a 4 here, popping the set Messenger apiece. Having fulfilled its purpose, we tribute Snipe Hunter to revive Celestia, swinging in for 2300. Since Jean has Mole in hand, this was the correct play, as he will still crash, and if he had Snipe Hunter on the field, it would return to his hand. Grand Mole annoyingly resets the board and he doesn't set anything further. All Graton needs is a monster, and at this point most Lightsworn monsters would be able to reach lethal from this position. He draws a Brick and Cold Wave, and we just have to pray Tail isn't able to get Dark Samorg on the board to swing the game. Instead, he summons Slate Warrior, which still isn't great as it puts us on a 1-turn clock. we do have the Outfidus and a Cyber Dragon special summon alongside Explore the Dragon for our normal summon. To ensure Tail is unable to use his set card to counter, we activate the Cold Wave Graton set, locking down all spell and trap cards until the next turn, and that's game. Explore the Dragon takes out the Slate Warrior through its effect, and Cyber Dragon is safe to swing in directly for lethal. We meet up with Blister again outside of the arena alongside Bolts, one of the friends we made during our adventure on the inside. These two are our next opponents in the semi-finals, and they are certainly worthy of that placement. Blister plays an Earth Attribute Monster machine package centered around the Kameno monsters. Machinas, at least in this stage of Yu-Gi-Oh!, focused around a beatdown strategy, which centered around getting its boss monster, Machina Force, onto the field. This was a notoriously slow strategy because you need all three of the base Machinas on the board, alongside Commander Covington to use the latter's effect to summon Force, so the archetype quickly abandoned it over time. Regardless, Blister does play utility monsters that will try and turbo him into the required pieces as fast as possible in both Giant Rats, since he plays nothing but Earth attributes, and this can help him search for the individual pieces. Alongside Summoner Monk, a spellcaster that allows him to special summon one level 4 monster from the deck once per turn. However, that monster is unable to attack. As long as he has Machina Sniper on the board, we're unable to target any other Machina monsters. And with its decent 1800 attack points, it does the job as a shield until he has all the Machinas on his side of the field. Aside from the Machinas and the two monsters I just listed, he runs a lone copy of the boss monster Machina Force, sitting at a hefty 4600 attack points. Despite being a big body, it is kinda sucky. You have to pay 1000 points to declare an attack, and you can sacrifice it to special summon the individual Machina pieces. I guess that's useful when you're trying to go for an OTK, but with how long it takes to get this thing on the field in the first place, would you really want to get rid of it? Finally, he runs 3 copies of Drillroid, one of the better Roid monsters that destroys any set monster during damage calculation. This nullifies any flip effects or an effect that states destroy a battle in its card text, so a really useful monster in general to get over a number of annoying bodies that may crop up. Also, Ancient Gear Soldier that prevents the activation of spell and traps in the damage step when it battles. For the spell traps, Blister runs equips in Big Bang Shot that grants piercing damage alongside a flat 400 point buff, United We Stand buffing a monster by 800 for every other monster on their side of the field, Megamorph which doubles the attack of one of their monsters if they have less life points, and can be equipped to one of ours if they have more life points to halve the attack points of one of our beaters. Gaia Power at 2 is a field spell that gives a flat buff to all Earth type monsters. He doesn't play Terraforming to turbo into this though. Limiter Removal of course doubles the attack points of all machine type monsters on the field. Quite potent if he has multiple Machina monsters already on the field at resolution. To keep his individual pieces safe whilst he racks up the materials needed for the combo, he runs 2 copies of My Body is a Shield to stop destruction effects, Swords of Revealing Light to prevent attacks for 3 turns, and carries spot removal in the form of Fissure to keep our board from growing too nasty. For the traps, he's running all the staples you'd expect, Mirror Force, Torrential, Widespread Ruins, with the addition of Wall of Revealing Light at 1 copy. If he pays enough life points, this can pretty much prevent most of our monsters from being able to declare an attack. I don't think it'll be as strong as usual though, since we have plenty of opportunities to fuse into a 6000 points Chimeristic Fortress Dragon with the amount of machine monsters he actually plays. Speaking of Chimeristic, he plays a sole copy in the fusion deck, and I can't understand why, as he doesn't play a single copy of Cyber Dragon, the only specific material listed on the card text. Unless Bolt Tanner is running it, I can't see a reason for why this is placed here. Bolt Tanner also runs an extremely competent beatdown deck of the zombie variety. You of course have the big beaters you'd expect from this era in Giant Orc and Jiraigumo, both sporting negative side effects as a trade-off for their easy summoning requirements. Where this gets really interesting though, it's where it pertains to the overall zombie package. Mizuki at 3 copies is a 1700 point zombie that can revive other zombies from the grave by banishing itself. Pair this with the recruiter of this type in Pyramid Turtle, which can turbo into a 2400 beat stick in Ryo Koki because of its abysmal defense, all of which he runs at 3 by the way, and these cards overall just have disgusting staying power. Not only is he capable of swarming the field with these massive bodies, it's going to take a long time to fully get rid of them, leading to a situation where he could just simply overwhelm us with his beatdown plays. Red Ogre at 1 copy is basically Bryonak but as a 2 tribute monster. It sounds strong, but the caveat is that it can only use its effect when it's normal summoned. But it's still a pretty beefy attacker in its own right, sitting at 2800 attack points. 3 copies of Plague Spreader Zombie, the only tuner he plays in the deck by the way, can revive itself from the graveyard by returning a card from the hand to the top of the deck. Even if you didn't want to waste this effect, as it leaves the field completely once it's destroyed again, you could always use Mizuki to revive it instead. This facilitates his synchro plays into either Doom Kaiser Dragon or Revived King Hades, both synchro monsters that list Plague Spreader specifically as the material. Doom Kaiser isn't that impressive, as its effects of reviving the zombie from the opponent's graveyard isn't really that good when we aren't playing any zombies. Revived King, on the other hand, protects all of his other zombies from our effect monsters if they're destroyed by battle, so I believe this rules out Exploder Dragon immediately. They're both not that beefy, sitting at 2400 and 2450 respectively. Revived King's effect more than makes up for it though. Finally, for the monsters, he's running 3 copies of the final villain of the Yu-Gi-Oh! GX manga, Tragoria. Tragoria exists within the same tier as Gore's Emissary of Darkness, being special summoned from the hand once the user has taken damage. It then gains 600 points for every card in the hand. Tragoria has 2 effects that can be pretty useful when they're relevant. The first is that you can discard a monster from the hand, and then take control of one of our monsters that has the same level. Looking through this deck, this effect won't apply to us at all though. Bolt Tanner himself doesn't run any level 5 monsters, so he's unable to take control of our Cyber Dragons. The only monster that he could potentially take that's of any use is Cyber Twin Dragon, by discarding the lone copy of Red Ogre, but we can just play around this by opting for one of our other fusions that aren't a level 8 monster. Its second effect will be applicable, as it can change its level to the same as the monster he targets from his graveyard. This could turn Tragoria theoretically into anything from a level 2 to a level 8, and it just provides Bolt Tanner far more flexibility to transition into his synchro plays, especially given how easy Tragoria's summoning requirements even are. For the spells, you'd be shocked to know he doesn't play any of the staples. No Heavy, Reborn, MST, so on and so forth. Instead, he plays specific, zombie-centric spell cards alongside a number of the more powerful equips. For the equips, he runs a lone copy of all the good ones: Axe of Despair, United We Stand, Mage Power, and Megamorph. Creature Swap at 2 copies could allow him to trade his recruiters for one of our stronger monsters, then run into the recruiter on our side of the field and get the value from that once it hits the graveyard. Book of Life at 2 copies is virtually Monster Reborn for the zombie archetype, allowing him to revive a zombie from his grave, and then he can banish a card from our graveyard. He has so many useful targets for this thing, especially if he runs out of Mizukis. This deck alone essentially has 5 Monster Reborns baked into it when you actually think about it. For the trap cards, Bolt is running cards that specifically destroy our own resources, whether it's monsters in the several copies of Trap Hole, Bottomless Trap Hole, or Acid Trap Hole, and spell and traps in the form of Magic Jammer and 2 copies of Dust Tornado. He's probably going heavy on the Dust Tornadoes because he doesn't play any copies of Mystical Space Typhoon or Heavy Storm. Between them both, Bolt Tanner by far is probably the bigger threat. Let's just hope Graton doesn't misplay like he always tends to do. Blister starts off with getting his Gaia power online. He doesn't make great use of this though, opting to summon Cyber Phoenix, that's a fire attribute monster, so he doesn't get the flight increase. He ends his turn by setting another back row. Graton draws Honest for turn, and with his win condition in hand already, he just needs to mill 4 different Light Swans to the grave as the requirement. He uses Solar Recharge to draw an additional 2 cards, then mills his Wolf via Foolish Burial, reviving it to the field in attack position. He summons the Jane he drew via the effect of Recharge and is able to swing over the Cyber Phoenix. Jane gains 300 points in the damage step, raising its attack points to 2100 for that battle only. Blister taking the 900 point difference as damage. Wolf is also able to swing in directly, leaving them with 5000 life points at the end of the turn. Blister does get a free draw off the back of Cyber Phoenix. Bolt Tanner summons Mizuki and it's buffed by Blister's Gaia power, making it strong enough to swing over either Light Swan. He attempts to destroy Jane and Graton activates the Honest in hand, raising Jane's attack points by the current attack start of the attacking monster. Mizuki crashes into the now 4000 point Jane, inflicting 1800 points of damage as a result. Bolt sets 2 face downs and that ends the game. I didn't know at the time that he didn't have any battle traps, so we do use the MST here to pop one of his face downs, destroying Acid Trap Hole. This wasn't required by any stretch looking back, it's just that I don't do the deck profiles for the opponents until after I record the challenge. Our final duel in this tag tournament, probably as expected, is our fated rematch with the twins. I just realised I didn't go over either of the deck's profiles last time as it was an optional duel, but Rua is still using the exact same Morphtronic deck he used in our singles duel. The twins' decks contrast heavily from a narrative perspective. Whilst Rua favours the rigid technological advancements of machines, Ruka herself plays a fairy-centric deck, based around nature and control, using cards to prevent us from declaring attack, whilst boosting her life points to obscene levels with the intent of decking us out. She's not really into dueling or hurting anyone, so this deck strategy does fit her quite a bit. The true power is when they come together as a team, as shown several times throughout the 5D's anime through the duel with the Dark Side of D-Mac and Luciano, and in the final saga during the 3-way duel with Aporia. Rua's ace card Power Tool Dragon is a nerfed version of the original Signer Dragon in Livestream Dragon. It isn't until Ruka's life is on the line that he sacrifices himself and awakens his latent abilities as a signer. The Crimson Dragon sheds the mechanical shell, inhibiting Power Tool Dragon, evolving it back into its natural state, Rua fulfilling his own potential because of the love he has for his sister. And Livestream Dragon kind of represents their union into one, so to speak, taking a form that much closely resembles cards that Ruka uses herself. Even down to its special ability that restores 2000 life points is far more in line with Ruka's deck strategy of continuously gaining life points to stall out the game. We won't see Livestream Dragon here at all for the record. I just really loved the nuanced storytelling surrounding the progression of every character of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. It's the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Series for a reason, guys. Anyways, Ruka starts things off with his Mortronic Radion in attack position. As it includes itself in its effect, his attack is raised by 800, now sitting at 1800. He then ends his turn by setting a face down. Graton draws Foolish Burial for turn, pitching Celestia with the effect of Solar Recharge, which allows him to draw an additional 2 cards from the deck, in Honest and another Foolish Burial. He mills the Wolf to the grave through Foolish Burial, special summoning it in attack position. The first time was so nice, he had to try it twice, expanding our board state with another copy of Wolf. Graton summons Honest to the field and swings it into Radion. Rua sends a monster to the grave to switch it into defense position. Kinda pointless as Wolf swings over it anyway, leaving him open to 2 direct attacks. Both Wolf and Honest swing in directly, inflicting 3200 points of battle damage. Honest goes back to the hand thanks to its effect. He then sets the Bottomless Trap Hole, ending the turn. Still doesn't set the Giant Trunade though, the greedy sod. All Ruka can accomplish is setting a monster alongside another back row. She activates Messenger of Peace to prevent any attacks with a 1500 point monster or higher. We can out the Messenger with MST, but I have no answers to the other set card because Graton refuses to set the Giant Trunade. For assurance, we mill the 3 Sidras from the deck with Future Fusion, targeting Cyber End Dragon, surging our other copy of Mystical Space Typhoon with Different Dimension Capsule. Since she's going to want to prevent our attacks, I think using a monster with piercing that can inflict a ton of damage without necessarily needing to hit indirectly is our best option. For our second copy of Different Dimension Capsule, we search for DNA Surgery. Her other set card is nothing but a bluff, so our wolves can destroy her monster and swing in directly for an additional 2100 points. Pending we survive this turn with both our monsters intact, all Graton has to do is activate the Giant Trunade. Don't let us down, Graton. Rua special summons his own copy of Cyber Dragon and we yeet that thing into oblivion immediately with Bottomless Trap Hole. Graton makes the riskiest play of all time. He's trying to throw this dual bro at this point by not activating the Giant Trunade. Does he want to win or not? Thankfully, the remaining set cards do end up being useless, and Giant Rat is summoned to the field via a Recruiter effect. Graton then uses Honest during his second attack and we win the duel from that position. He is lucky none of those set cards were a Mirror Force. I would have shanked this man in the alleyway. The tag tournament comes to a close with us as the victors. More importantly, we got our run back against the twins and Graton finally leaves us, excited to tell his love Angie about his whole ordeal. I hope I never see you again, Graton, you selfish prick. I hope Angie friendzones you too. Get out of here, bruv. From above the arena in the director's box, the current Duel King Jack Atlas watches on, setting up an inevitable showdown with the former Hell Kaiser. Once we're confronted by a member of security, they've completely forgotten about the impersonating an officer whilst breaking into the vault thing, and he slips us an invitation to the long-awaited Fortune Cup, a tournament gathering the best duelists throughout Neo Domino City in an elimination-style format. The winner of the Fortune Cup then gets a chance to take on the current king, Jack Atlas, in a formal title bout. We showed the invitation to Blister and were instructed to head for the city highway. Since the preliminaries of the Fortune Cup are all conducted in the riding duel format, we must first pass a driving exam to prove we have the skills required. This, like the others, is not a challenge at all. Certainly now with our beefed up D-wheel, as I've been spending all of the DP we've acquired in upgrading our ride. Before we can head for the stadium, a sexy D-wheeler named Base challenges us to a riding duel, serving as our tutorial for the dueling style. Now that it's finally relevant, it's time to introduce our final deck centered around Zane's darker side, and heel turn in the Cyber Dark cards. For the most part, the foundation of our deck remains the same as our standing variant. We're still running 3 copies of all the monsters: Cyber Dragon, Proto, Valet, Phoenix, Exploder and Inferno Dragon. Where this differs is the drastic lack of spell cards, barred 3 in favour of 3 copies of all the baby Cyber Darks in Edge, Keel and Horn. These 3 are really weak monsters taken in isolation, with the effect of boosting their attack by absorbing a level 3 dragon from our graveyard. In the anime, it was level 4s, so they could absorb Inferno Dragon, raising their attack by an instant 2000. Here though, they can only synergize with our Exploder Dragon. They also have their own individual effects, ranging from burn damage after destroying a monster, piercing damage, and having the ability to attack directly by halving their current attack points. From the surface, they suck. At the very most, their attack can be raised to a poverty 1800, in an era where synchro summoning makes monsters sitting in the 2000s and above so accessible. And you'd be right, if this was the regular rule set. In riding duels though, they actually become very viable. The whole difference, as I mentioned before with the riding duels, is that contrary to the name of speed spells, spell cards specific to this duel style require resources to actually be played. This is in the form of speed counters. Each player receives 1 in the standby phase, and unless you have the required amount, you simply can't activate a spell card, even if the conditions for the actual effect are met already. The counter requirement for these cards are absurdly high too for the most part, often being in the 8 to 10 range. In many cases here, spell cards are just too slow to be activated, and so building a spell heavy deck like you would in regular Yu-Gi-Oh! Turns into an insurmountable brick in a riding duel. So instead, I had to narrow down our spell package to the essentials. In World Championship 2009, you'll have both speed spells that explicitly appear in the 5th season of 5Ds, such as Jack Atlas's End of Storm, but to fill the ranks a bit, they converted regular spells like Monster Reborn into a speed spell. Thus, we're playing a lone copy of Monster Reborn, Mystical Space Typhoon and Limiter Removal. All 3 of these are generic enough in terms of the context of our deck, ensuring that as long as we have enough speed counters, we'll always generate value from them. When I was in the lab cooking up this deck, I went into this with the intent of still playing a fusion heavy package. That simply isn't feasible in 2009, as there is only 1 fusion spell that's been given the speed treatment, and you won't believe what it is. I didn't either until I looked it up. It ain't Poly, nor Power Bond, it isn't even Dragon's Mirror or Fusion Gate. No, it's Miracle Fusion, the ultra specific fusion card that only works with the Elemental Heroes monsters, and can only fuse monsters from the grave and the field. This choice is just utter baffling to me, not only because the fastest way to get Miracle Fusion online is by fusing your heroes with another fusion card to quickly dump the materials, the choice to not have at least a generic fusion spell in Poly kills 90% of the decks around fusion you can specifically play. So we're just going to have to rely heavily on Chimeritic Fortress Dragon as our win condition. To fill out the deck, we had to play more traps, and I decided to add 3 copies of Cybernetic Hidden Technology here. This, for what it's worth, is a really great continuous trap that serves as spot removal, as long as we have a Cyber Dragon or a monster that lists Cyber Dragon specifically as a material like our fusion cards. When the opponent declares an attack, we contribute it to destroy the attacking monster. Since we virtually play 6 Cyber Dragons, 7 if you count Chimeritic in that as well, this trap has the potential to take out a number of the opponent's stronger monsters when need be. To round off the deck, we're also playing 3 copies of Fusion Guard. Like Damage Pulverizer before it, if an opponent activates an effect that inflicts damage, we can negate it by discarding a fusion monster from the extra deck to the grave. This gives our other fusions that we can't summon some use as negation. Overall, I'm not too sure what to expect with this deck. It's a lot worse and far slower than our previous one, but it's used within the context of a slower format, so it might actually be somewhat decent. Now, back to base. Life has a funny way of working out sometimes. I'm not even kidding here, base is basically Cyrus. He's running Cyrus's exact deck. All the Roid monsters you can think of, Steamroid, Drillroid, Expressroid, Submarine Roid are all present here at 3 copies. We are deadass about to play out the Season 2 duel in real time here. Bass's spell package would be scary if this was the regular game. Monster Reborn, Limiter Removal, Scapegoat is playing with some real power here. Since most of these cards have a heavy spell counter requirement, I can't foresee them actually resolving, so he should be prone to bricking quite a bit. Out of necessity, he has also doubled up on the trap cards, opting to pair 3 copies of Sakuretsu Armor with his lone copy of Mirror Force and Trap Hole for removal. Trap Jammer is here at 2 copies and applies the same effect to traps that Magic Jammer does to spells. Makes sense considering the trap heavy approach of the format. Last but not least, he's running 3 copies of Supercharge. A pretty good trap at face value that allows him to draw 2 cards if he has nothing but Roid Machine monsters on the field. Being a triple pot greed for the archetype in a format that lacks any real form of back row removal is actually insane now that I think about it. Since he's also running exclusively machine type monsters, our DNA surgery won't be required to get us into our win condition. Either way, this will serve as a good stress test for the deck. If not, I can always rebalance it before the preliminaries. Base starts off by summoning Steamroid in attack position, setting 2 back row to protect it. We draw a second copy of Cyber Dragon and special summon our first to the field, committing our normal summon to Cyber Dark Edge. In hindsight, this was a pretty big risk to take, now knowing what traps Base was actually using, but we go straight into Chimeritic here, now swinging in successfully for 3k of damage, dropping his speed counters back to 0. On his next turn, he summons Submarine Roid and uses its effect to attack directly. We don't lose a speed counter here though, since it's less than 1000 damage and he sets a further back row. We draw DNA Surgery, summoning Cyber Dark Horn in attack position. When attempting to swing over the Submarine Roid, it turns out that one of the set cards he played turn 1 was actually Mirror Force. I have no idea why he didn't use it when we swung in directly, but now we lose our entire field. We could have special summoned Cyber Dragon here, but the problem was I didn't want to run into a Steamroid that would hit over it. We need Cyber Dragon for our next turn to contact Fuse again. Base summons Drillroid and swings directly for 2400. We lose 2 speed counters from the battle. Submarine Roid then switches back to defense and he ends his turn. We draw Cyber Phoenix for turn, and with the course now clear, special summon our second Cyber Dragon to the board, normal summoning the Phoenix as well. We want to at least keep 2 bodies on the board just in case one of the set cards is a Zaikaretsu armor. So we leave Phoenix alone, only giving Chimeritic 3000 attack points. We can also get the free draw if Phoenix is destroyed, so this felt like the right move to make. We are successful in swinging in for 4200 and he loses all the speed counters he accumulated. With nothing left to do, we end our turn. Base does out the Phoenix with his Drillroid on the next turn, giving us Infernal Dragon per the effect. He doesn't set any further back row and we attempt to swing for game on the following turn. He counters this with Defusion. Defusion has a shockingly low counter requirement at 2, and we lose our 3k beatstick yet again. To at least protect our life points, we summon the Infernal Dragon and he counters this with his final trap card, Trap Hole. At this point, I'm just shocked that an AI in this game has actually understood timings and when to use the card appropriately. Usually they are way too trigger happy to resolve them unoptimally. On his following turn, he activates the speed spell, Slow Down Machine. This basically takes a speed counter away for 500 points of damage we take this turn, instead of the usual 1000. So we lose 3 more once the Drillroid attacks us directly. He then sets a monster, and we activate Cybernetic Hidden Technology, just to get it online. We break the following turn, drawing Damage Pulverizer, and we have to summon Exploder Dragon at this point just to out the Drillroid. This does leave us open to lethal if he draws literally any of his other Roid monsters. Channeling his inner Cyrus, he fumbles the entire bag and breaks. We are put on a 2-turn clock by his Truck Roid though. I swear if we lose the Truck Roid of all things bro. In his main phase 2, he summons Express Roid, and its effect activates adding both Steamroid and Drillroid back to the hand from the graveyard, ensuring certain defeat if we can't defeat him on our next turn. We draw Cyber Dark Heal for turn, and that wins us game ladies and gentlemen. We can equip it with the Exploder Dragon from the grave, boosting its attack to 1800s, and we now have enough attack points to swing over either of his monsters. I will admit, that wasn't the best showing of the deck, but we were able to get a lot of heavy damage off on him. I just wasn't expecting the AI to suddenly start playing the game competently. With that now out of the way, we head to the stadium for the preliminary rounds of the Fortune Cup. In a similar vein to the tag duel tournament earlier on, the preliminaries consist of 3 duels, all in the riding duel format this time around. Our first opponent is our long-awaited battle with Officer Trudge, taking time out of his busy schedule to failing to catch criminals to compete. Officer Trudge plays an overall earth package of monsters filled with recruiters, and utility monsters in Drillroid to pop set monsters before damage calculation. He does play a lot of the monsters he used in the anime at this point in time, like Montage and Handcuff Dragon. Both are pretty useless as they require tributes, and their effects just in general aren't worth the investment. He does play 2 copies of Samurai Sasuke, a very old level 4 beta that saw some use in the DM era. Sangun obviously is here for the switches, and the 2 tuners in Jute Fighter and Krebons facilitate into his level 6 synchro plays via his ace monster in Goyo Guardian. This thing got errated later in the game's history to be only summonable with an Earth Tuner, but back in its heyday of 2009, this thing was a menace. Goyo Guardian is a 2800 level 6 monster that has a generic material requirement, and once it destroys an opponent's monster, it can then special summon said monster to their side of the field in defense position. Not only is this thing really difficult to hit over directly, because it just steals your monsters over and over, this effect allows the user to tempo into other synchro players incredibly quickly. He runs this at 3 and has more than enough tuners to facilitate getting into all 3 copies as well. Out of the tuners, Krebons is the only notable one to mention, with it being a level 2 monster with a decent attack stat of 1200. Its effect is the main reason as to why it's so great. As long as it's face up, it can negate any battle that targets it by paying 800 life points. As this isn't a once per turn, he can eventually stall out the game if need be until he draws into a level 4 monster to go into Goyo Guardian. 800 points isn't that much of a cost either, and will only get dodgy for him if we're able to swarm the board, which is pretty unlikely to happen. DNA Surgery into Chimera Tech will be our best way to out this quickly. If this was a standing duel, Trudge's spell package would be packing heat. 2 monster reborns, a Feather Duster 2? All of these speed spells has a pretty hefty spell count requirement, so far as intimidating as they appear on the surface, we won't be seeing any of these come up. For the traps, he's running a package of cards to negate us and Dark Bribe at 3 copies, and a lone copy of Solemn Judgment. Bottle and Strap Hole, Torrential and Mirror Force can all destroy monsters he finds problematic, and the 2-card combo of No Entry and Tragedy can wipe our entire board, as Tragedy destroys all monsters the opponent controls when they switch to defense position, and No Entry switches all monsters from attack to defense when activated. He doesn't play ratios that are favourable for getting this off consistently, but in a best of 1 scenario, he only needs to resolve it once anyways. Trudge starts things off nice and slow with a set monster and 2 back rows. We draw MST for turn, a brick all things considered. I don't think it's wise to commit to the Cyber Dragon yet. I want to wait until he gets Goyo on the board preferably, so instead we summon Cyber Valley in attack position, setting the Cybernetic Hidden Technology in our hand. Trudge does summon the Jute Fighter on his next turn, but his set monster isn't a level 4, so he's unable to go into Goyo Guardian. He swings over Cyber Valley with Jute and Valley's effect activates, negating the battle, and we get to draw a card, getting our Process Cyber Dragon. If only we had our DNA Surgery. We set the damage pulverizer we drew for turn, special summoning the original Cyber Dragon to the field in attack position, committing our normal summon to Cyber Dark Heal so we can sweep his board. No Mirror Force surprisingly, as we succeed with both attacks, dropping his life points by 1150. Cyber Dragon is forcibly set due to the destruction effect of Gonongo, and we end our turn. On his next turn, he summons another Gonongo to hit over Keel. Just because I forgot to last turn, I activate our Cybernetic Hidden Technology. Wasn't even intending on using the effect, and he wastes his Dark Bribe negating it, giving us a free draw in Inferno Dragon. Gonongo does swing over and we take 550 points from the battle, setting an additional 2 back row. On our next turn, we finally draw into the DNA Surgery, and we actually have enough speed counters to resolve the MST in our hand. We try to destroy the middle card and it's another Dark Bribe, which he activates, giving us another card and Explode Dragon. We set the DNA Surgery, summoning Inferno Dragon to the field in attack position, and flipping the Cyber Dragon back to attack mode. Inferno Dragon swings over Gonongo, dealing 650 points of damage, and it's flipped face down, actually preventing its all destruction effects from resolving. Cyber Dragon also successfully swings in for 2100, taking away 2 speed counters. On the following turn, Krebons finally makes an appearance, destroying our set Inferno Dragon. We activate the DNA Surgery before the battle, preparing to use Krebon as the material for a contact fusion. Since he doesn't set any fresh back row this turn, this marks the end of the game. On our next turn, we do contact fuse his Krebons with the Proto Cyber Dragon we normal summoned. He negates the normal summon of Chimeritic Fortress Dragon with the Solemn Judgment, halving his life points in the process, unintentionally putting himself at lethal range from a direct attack from our Cyber Dragon. This was a far better showcase of what our deck can actually do, and I'm starting to think that the Underworld deck was just a little too ahead of its time. Zane would have swept the Riding Duel League with this. In the semi-finals, we face off with Jack's old rival, Enjo Makuro. In the dub, I'm pretty sure they changed his title to the former king, but I don't recall that actually being a thing in the original version. In the anime, he uses a burn deck centered around monsters with a heavy metal aesthetic that suits his whole punk design. Even his deck in this game is called Wheels on Fire, so I was not expecting the damn near identical zombie deck to what we dueled against earlier on. You can tell the developers at this point are really running out of ideas. They want to make decks that are challenging to face off against relative to the point in the game we're in, but there's only so many archetypes that you can actually build around. Still though, would it have killed him to actually give him a burn strategy? This is the second or third variation of a zombie deck we've seen so far. Like the other zombie deck, he's got all the basics covered. Mizuki for the revival, the 3 Pyramid Turtles to turbo into Ryu Koki, Spirit Reaper for the stall, Zombie Master, and even Plague Spreader Zombie, which of course plays into his Doom Kaiser Synchro monster that requires it as the tuning material. He does have a new monster in the otherwise unimpressive Ill Blood. It's a 6-star monster that's treated as a vanilla monster when on the field and in the graveyard. And since it's a Gemini, you can normal summon it a second time whilst it's already on the field. And this will allow him from that point on to special summon a zombie monster from either his hand or the graveyard. This effect in of itself is a glass cannon, because if this monster leaves the field at any point, all of the monsters that it special summoned via this effect are gone along with it. I guess this card can be useful to apply pressure or further advance into Doom Kaiser Dragon. With only having 2100 attack points though, it's not going to be too difficult to crash into if need be, and then he just loses all the value he gained from it to begin with. The artwork is the stuff of nightmares though, just look at that thing. To round off his monsters, he's playing the Assault variant of Doom Kaiser Dragon. Basically, around this time of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, they released a trap called Assault Mode Activate. In essence, this allows you to transform one of your Synchro monsters into a regular effect monster with its own unique effect. Both Jack and Yusei uses this particular card in a non-canon OVA that advertised the gimmick. A pretty good episode too, all things considered. I'm actually not sure if this mechanic in particular ever saw competitive play, but from what I can see here when it pertains to Enjo's card pool, it seems like a massive break. He plays the trap in question at 3 copies to try and force it, but the issue is to even get the assault monster online, you have to commit so many resources already into summoning the original Synchro monster, and then hope you have the assault mode in your back row to even activate it in the first place. Unless he opens the God Hand, I doubt we'll be seeing this thing ever crop up, even if its effect is quite decent. His spell package is actually relevant as they all have pretty low counter requirements, sitting at around 2 to 3 on average. Creature Swap to take control of one of our bigger monsters. Foolish Burial can mill Plague Spreader Zombie directly to grave, alongside other zombies that he can revive through the effect as Zombie Master. Magical Mallet will allow him to return cards to his deck, and then he can redraw the same amount for a fresh hand. This makes his Riding Duel deck faster than most. The low counter requirement giving him some semblance of draw power, and of course the Smashing Road and Shield Crush can destroy an attacking or defense position monster respectively. As mentioned before, he runs 3 copies of the suspected brick in Assault Mode Activate. The rest of his trap lineup do make up for running such a useless card though, running all the staples in Bottomless Trap Hole, Mirror Force, Torrential and Dimensional Prison at 1 copy. 2 copies of Escape from the Dark Dimension is essentially if you mix Return from the Different Dimension with Call of the Haunted. He's allowed to target 1 banished monster from his banish zone and special summon it to the field. I think he plays this exclusively to get back the Plague Spreader zombies, as they remove themselves if they're destroyed after being revived by the graveyard effects. Oh, and also the Mizukis wants to get banished from reviving his other zombies. We could potentially have a lot of trouble with this matchup. Zombies were just plain broken around this time, and his deck as a whole just has the ability to outtempo what we're playing in the slow as hell Cyber Dark package. Turn 1 we draw Damage Pulverizer, summoning Cyber Valley to the field. We then end the turn setting DNA Surgery, Cybernetic Hidden Technology and Damage Pulverizer. Already he's able to activate Foolish Burial, sending Spirit Reaper to the graveyard. He summons Mitsuki and swings into Cyber Valley, and we use the effect to negate the attack by banishing it, and we draw Cyber Dark Edge from the effect. At least he ends his turn without setting any back row. This allows us to special summon Cyber Dragon without any fear of retaliation, and we even have the option to go into Fortress Dragon if we want to. Instead, we summon Exploder Dragon and use its destruction effect to take out Mizuki, dealing 2100 points of direct damage with the Cyber Dragon. Usually I wouldn't want to waste Exploder Dragon so needlessly like this, but because we need it in the graveyard so our Cyber Darks can absorb it, I don't really want to hold on to it in a Riding Duel. On his following turn, Enjo banishes the Mizuki in grave to revive his Spirit Reaper. He then summons Pyramid Turtle and crashes into Cyber Dragon, taking 900 points of damage. A small price to pay in order to turbo out Ryu Koki, who will then be able to swing over our Cyber Dragon. Since Cyber Dragon is doomed either way at this point, we change Cybernetic Hidden Technology using the effect immediately. By tributing the Cyber Dragon, we can at least take down the Koki along with it. This puts us in a perilous situation though, as we can't contend with the Spirit Reaper anymore. We draw another copy of Cyber Dark Edge for turn, and we need to put something on the field to stop Spirit Reaper from swinging in and forcing us to discard something. Edge can attack directly by halving its attack points, and since we can equip Exploder Dragon to it, we can just keep chipping in for 900 points of damage each turn. Horn in this case though is the better option as it inflicts piercing damage. This means we can attack into the Spirit Reaper repeatedly regardless of its position and deal around 1600 points instead, so we go that route. If he's unable to out the Cyberdark Horn, we can end the duel in the next 2 turns. Angel's turn goes by with him only setting another monster, and we summon Cyberdark Edge on this occasion and attack directly for 400. Horn then swings into Spirit Reaper once again to inflict an additional 1600 points in piercing damage, leaving him only with a measly 1400 life points. I don't think this duel could have gone any better than it has so far. It's unfortunate that he does manage to draw the out in Ill Blood, tributing the Spirit Reaper to summon it to the field. He then flips his Pyramid Turtle face up and we lose Edge and he Exploded Dragon to the battle. Cyberdark Horn does survive as it's the equip that's destroyed first, but we're now in a position where only a Cyber Dragon can out this board. We unfortunately draw Cyberdark Keel for turn, and to at least keep the pressure on him we summon our second copy of Edge, equipping it with the Exploded Dragon from the graveyard, using its effect to attack directly by halving its current attack stats. This leaves Angel with 500 life points regardless of his current board, and we ensure we'll at least have another monster on the field at the end of his next battle phase. Angel summons Plague Spreader Zombie, tuning it with the Pyramid Turtle on the field to bring out Doom Kaiser Dragon, reviving the Plague Spreader through its effect. Cyberdark Edge survives this encounter with Ill Blood by removing Exploded Dragon, but we take a hefty 1900 points from the battle and are now staring down 2 powerful monsters. But it simply doesn't matter at this point. He misplayed massively by reviving the Plague Spreader Zombie in attack position. Thus, we can summon our Cyberdark Keel from hand and equip it yet again with the Exploded Dragon. Now sitting at 1800 points, we have more than enough firepower to hit over the Plague Spreader Zombie and deal the remaining 500 points to his life total. And that's game. Whilst the early lead certainly helped, just the ability to continue to recycle the same monster from the grave and the natural staying power the Cyberdarks had to begin with kept us from taking massive direct damage when Angel was finally able to get his strategy online. Having proven ourselves against the former title challenger, we move on to the final round of the preliminaries. Our final opponent is Bomber, another machine type user of the Reactor variety. The Reactor archetype are a really interesting burn strategy that basically aims to punish the opponent for trying to play the game. You have the 3 main monsters in Summon, Trap and Spell Reactor. As their name suggests, whenever they are on the field, we will take burn damage for every type of card we play. This in of itself creates a really unique game state, where we either play conservatively to prevent the burn damage from becoming too big to deal with the risk of leaving ourselves open to his direct attacks, or we try to play aggressively to rid the field of these things, taking a ton of damage in the process of it. Either way, we should expect a ton of burn damage this time around. This culminates in the boss monster of the deck, which essentially combines all 3 of these effects together in Flying Fortress Sky Fire. Not only does it have 3000 attack points and combines the 3 effects of the smaller monsters, it can even discard a card from the hand to destroy 1 card we control, and he runs 2 of these to boot. Yeah, we're definitely not getting over this thing without our Chimera tech. The rest of his monster package are just filled with competent machine type monsters to further pile the pressure on. Mechanical Chaser, being one of the earliest examples of power creep in the Yu-Gi-Oh game, is here at 2 copies. He's also on the playset of Twin Barrel Dragon, a 4-star dark attribute machine type monster that can pop 1 card on our side of the field if he flips heads twice in a row. This alongside Chaser can be revived through the effect of the tuner monster Black Salvo, which revives a 4-star dark attribute machine type monster from the graveyard, facilitating further synchro plays into Dark Strike Fighter. This synchro monster was a menace back during this era. Like the rest of his deck, this card is centered around burn, with it being a 2600 beta that can tribute a monster he controls to burn us for 200 points times the level of the tributing monster. During this period of the game, there wasn't a hard once per turn on the effect either, so you could pair this with say Goyo Guardian to swarm the field with synchros, hit him for massive damage, and then tribute all of your 6 to 8 star synchro monsters to burn the game. He doesn't use this card to its full potential, but it's still a massive threat given we'll most likely be on extremely low life points by the time this thing hits the field. Our trap package does play a lot of cards that negate effect damage, such as Fusion Guard and Damage Pulverizer. I'm just unsure of how effective they're going to be in preventing the burn effects long term. Bomber does play some powerful speed spells that synergize well with the rest of his strategy. They are just mostly breaks, as the average spell counter requirement for most of these are 6+. The only card I could see coming up from this selection is Hammer Shot, which only requires 2, destroying the strongest monster on the field. I think this would end up hurting him more than it helps, as we don't really play any strong monsters outside of Chimeric Fortress Dragon and the occasional Cyber Dragon. He plays all the stable traps you'd expect at 1 copy. The few new additions are quite interesting though. Fake Explosion at 3 copies serves as Waboku for this archetype. Once it's activated, monsters on that battle phase can't be destroyed, and he can then special summon a copy of Summon Reactor from the hand or graveyard. Damage calculation still does apply here though. Lineage of Destruction can allow his Skyfire to attack twice in the same battle phase, as long as he destroys a set monster on our side of the field prior to activation. I doubt this thing's gonna come up sitting at only one copy. The threat of an instant 6,000 points of direct damage is something we do need to be wary of though. Full disclosure, we did lose to him on our first attempt of this duel. The reactors were just able to out-tempo us from the jump. We tried getting Cyber Dragon on the field for a contact fusion, but he countered with Bottomless Trap Hole. We then had to contend with a boosted Summon Reactor sitting at 2500 points. This forced us to use Limited Removal to swing over it with Keel. Unfortunately, with it being equipped with heavy mech support platform, it gained the same battle invulnerability as our Cyber Darks. Once it was able to get Skyfire on the board, it was curtains for us sadly. It was a really entertaining duel throughout, a back and forth chess match that could have potentially swung in our direction if he didn't have the initial Bottomless Trap Hole. In the run back, Bomber starts with Set Monster and 2 back rows. We draw into Infernal Dragon and so we summon it to the field. It's going to be destined for the graveyard no matter what happens, so the intent was to draw out the Bottomless Trap Hole if he had it set. And that he did, so we'll no longer have to worry about that interrupting our players. With a handful of monsters, there's nothing else we can achieve this turn. Bomber immediately goes into his Dark Strike Fighter once he summons Trap Reactor. The set card ended up being the tuner Black Salvo. We take a direct 2600 points of damage this turn, which is going to force us to waste our Proto Cyber Dragon to clear the field on our next go round, as long as his fresh set card isn't anything major. We draw Cybernetic Hidden Technology, summoning our Proto Cyber Dragon to the field. The contact fusion is successful. Thank God Dark Strike is a machine type and we swing in for 2000. Bomber smartly activates Fake Explosion, and whilst this doesn't negate the 2000 points of damage, he is able to special summon Reactor to the field after the battle. In the standby phase, we activate our set Hidden Technology, just to get it online as it is compatible with Chimeritic Fortress Dragon. It seems that he breaks as he ends his turn, and we draw into Fusion Guard. If we want to hit directly, we need to use our Exploder Dragon in hand. This isn't the worst play mind you, as it gives us the option to pivot straight into the Cyber Darks, so that's what we go for. Summon Reactor burns us for 800 points on the summon of Exploder Dragon, and both are destroyed after the battle. Chimeritic Fortress Dragon is successful in swinging in for another 2k, keeping our life points virtually equal throughout. We then set the Fusion Guard just in case he summons another burn monster we can negate. Bomber can only set a monster and we draw yet another copy of Fusion Guard. At this point, I'm feeling a lot more confident. We're able to keep him pinned back with our Chimeritic, and the 2 Fusion Guards at least provide a buffer when it comes to dealing with any burn damage. For our normal summon, we bring out the Cyber Dark Keel, equipping the Exploder Dragon to it from our graveyard. Every time Keel destroys a monster, it inflicts 300 points of burn damage to the opponent. With 1800 attack points, it has more than enough to deal with his set card, Spell Reactor, and a further direct attack from Chimeritic puts him firmly on a 1-turn clock. For Bomber's final turn, he sets a monster and an additional back row. Keel attempts to swing over his Trap Reactor, but it survives thanks to his 1800 defense points. We have to waste our final attack ridding it from the field, providing Bomber with an extra turn. I should have just attacked with the Chimeritic here, as Keel had enough attack points to inflict lethal anyway. This was a misplay on my part. In main phase 2, we set a copy of Edge, ending the turn. Bomber sets 1 face down card. We draw Cyber Dark Horn for turn and swing in for lethal with Keel. The freshly set card ends up being Sakuretsu Armor. It's all or nothing now as we attempt to swing with Chimeritic, and the final 2 set cards end up being a bluff. We advance from the preliminaries. The story at this point moves at an absurd pace. There's no filler content, no real side quests either. We go straight from the prelims to the actual tournament. Like the prelims, the Fortune Cup is set into 3 more rounds, this time in the form of 2 standing duels and a riding duel for the finals. Our first opponent is Ransborg, the dude wearing a knight cosplay who Aki absolutely destroys with her psychic abilities. Per the get up, Ransborg here plays a package of exclusively warrior monsters, most of them surrounding the level up gimmick that Little Yuke himself played in the Silent Swordsman package of cards alongside the Mystic Swordsman. Essentially, as long as they survive the turn, they can then level up into their next form, and their effects and powers scale relative to the current level of the monster. Out of the 2, the Mystic Swordsman line are probably the better level monsters he uses. They all have Dual Roy's effects of destroying a set monster without damage calculation, which unironically makes the weakest form of the card the best, and see more play out of any of them. Because they all virtually have the same effects, you don't need to do anything to summon the level 2 as it's the base level. So even with its really weak stat line, you don't exactly need attack points when your effect destroys set monsters before damage calculation. The Silent Swordsman level monsters negate the effects of spell cards over time. Level 3 can negate any spell that targets it specifically, level 5 enhances this by not being affected by spell cards, period, and level 7 can negate any spell card regardless of the target. To level these guys up, you do need to hit him for a direct attack, which isn't too hard considering how aggressive this deck appears to be, and even then he can get around that with a certain spell card we'll talk about shortly. Aside from these though, he does play a lot of decent warrior support monsters to build a deck around. Marauding Captain at 2 copies can special summon a level 4 or below monster from the hand when it's normal summoned. This is amazing to both swarm the field and set up Synchro Blaze. You will also pull off the lock if you manage to get both of them on the board at the same time. Command Knight of course gives a flat boost to all warrior monsters on the field, including itself. It also can't be targeted for an attack as long as another warrior is currently on the field. Goblin Attack Force, as you know, is a 2300 beta, really useful to apply pressure on the opponent and keep their field in check, and even with its negative side effect of switching to defense position, if Marauding Captain is currently on the field, we won't be able to target it for an attack anyways. Twin Sword Marauder at 3 copies not only can attack twice if it battles a defense position monster that turn, it also inflicts piercing damage. Sitting at a comfortable 1600 attack points to boot, this guy can really pile on the pressure if you don't draw into the right cards. He even plays a few tuner monsters, 3 copies of the 1600 vanilla Tune Warrior, and a lone copy of Comrade Swordsman and Landstar that gets a flat 400 buff to all warrior monsters on the field. I feel like I've been saying that a lot this deck profile. His synchro lineup isn't too bad either. He plays a number of beatsticks in Gaia, hand control thanks to the effect of X-Saber Umbrellum, but the outlier here is obviously Colossal Fighter. A level 8 warrior that not only gains the 100 attack points for every warrior currently in the graveyard, whenever it is destroyed by battle, it can revive one warrior from the grave. It can target itself with this effect by the way, so in theory even if you can swing over this thing, there's no real value in doing so. We're going to want to use this as material for Chimeric Fortress Dragon to get it off the field permanently, or at least I hope, as he runs 3 copies of everything in the extra deck. His final extra deck monster is the level 5 fusion in Giltire the D Knights. It might appear to be a random inclusion in the deck list, but trust me, it has a purpose. This interacts with the 2 copies of instant fusion he has in his spell package, a spell that allows you to summon a level 5 fusion monster regardless of its conditions for the cost of 1000 life points. Said monster can't attack and it's destroyed in the end phase. This card has one purpose and it's to turbo into his Colossal Fighter on a consistent basis, as long as he has one of the 2 tuner monsters currently in his hand. Instant Fusion saw a ton of play around this time for this scenario, being able to summon a level 5 monster for essentially free turn 1, and then going straight into one of the powerful level 8 synchros of this era was simply too good to pass up. Aside from the Instant Fusion, Ransborg is packing major heat. I guess that gold armor wasn't just a flex after all. He has everything: Brain Control, Fissure, Heavy Storm, Lightning Vortex, Mind Control, Monster Reborn, Mystical Space Typhoon, Smashing Ground, the list goes on bro. The warrior returning alive at 1 copy allows him to grab a warrior from the grave for essentially 0 cost, and the 3 copies of Reinforcement of the Army gives him the capacity to search virtually for any monster he needs from the deck at any given time. Level up at 2 copies gives more flexibility and can force the evolution of one of the level up monsters earlier than expected. He doesn't play any copies of level down, interestingly enough. The only trap card he runs in the deck is Roll Decree at 3 copies. He's more interested in just shutting down whatever we play while smashing over us with Colossal Fighter, and this will succeed in getting over the DNA Surgery, so we have to at least be wary of that. The lack of any negates or battle traps will give us the ability to force against it, more so than we otherwise would have been able to. I went in with this with somewhat realistic expectations, then I saw that opening hand. My god, is it bad. Ransborg started with an intimidating turn of Goblin Attack Force and a set card, most likely Roll Decree, or at least I think it's Roll Decree. I didn't know for sure, so once we drew another copy of Different Dimension Capsule for turn, we played them both, searching for a Cyber Dragon and a DNA Surgery. At this point, the best thing we can do is get our win conditions to the hand, and if it ends up being Roll Decree, so be it. We kinda have to play the Phoenix in attack mode here to get the value from its effect when it eventually hits the graveyard. We do use one of our creature swaps just to take control of his attack force, This in terms of his normal monsters is his strongest, so unless he has another copy in hand to crash, it kinda works as a wall. We are punished immediately as Ransborg plays Heavy Storm, perma-banishing both the DNA Surgery and Cyber Dragon for the rest of the duel. His face down was actually Royal Decree, but this is just a major blow to our chances at this point. He doesn't have another Goblin attack force thankfully, setting another monster and passing. We draw a Call of the Haunted and against my better judgment, swing over our Cyber Phoenix, inflicting 1100 points of damage. At this point I was just desperate for something that could turn the tables, even if it meant losing Goblin and giving Ransborg the onus to apply the pressure. It doesn't really pay off as we draw into DNA Surgery. Not bad, it's a piece of our win condition, I was just really hoping for a Cyber Dragon. Because of the opening, Ransborg goes all in, summoning Marauding Captain and getting Twin Sword Marauder on the field through the former's effects. The set monster he had on the field was Landstar, and so he synchros into Gaia, the Force of Earth, using Marauding as the material. Twin Sword destroys Goblin attack force, and we pretty much take a direct attack with a piercing thanks to Goblin's 0 defense stat. He is then free to attack directly with Gaia, inflicting a further 2600 points to our total, 4200 total for the entire battle phase. We draw Infernal Dragon for turn, and this presents an extremely crusty play, but it might just get us out of the situation scot-free. We summon Infernal Dragon and swing over his Twin Sword, dealing 400 points of damage. Next in main phase 2 we use our other copy of Creature Swap to take his Gaia, so that in the end phase when Infernal Dragon destroys itself and goes to our graveyard, we're able to keep his strongest monster and wipe his entire field like an Uno reverse card. When life gives you breaks, you gotta build a house, that's what I say at least. Ransborg has to waste both his Lightning Vortex and the brain control he used for the cost to out his own Gaia, putting us both into a top decking war so to speak. We draw Mystical Space Typhoon, which is pretty much useless at this point in the duel, and we're forced to revive our Cyber Phoenix with the Call of the Haunted, hitting it for 1200 points. I really want the Infernal Dragon, but we can't revive it without another monster on the board, as we'll just end up back in square one, not with it for an extra 800 points of damage. Ransborg sets a monster and we draw a Cyber Valley, summoning it in a tap position. We swing into his set monster with Phoenix just to see what it is, not expecting to hit over it. It ends up being Silent Swordsman level 3 and we can't out it. The AI cheats and top decks Mystical Space Typhoon of all things, popping the Call of the Haunted. Cyber Phoenix doesn't go back to the graveyard, which confused me initially. Cyber Phoenix when on the field can't actually be targeted by trap cards, so even though it can be revived from the grave with Call of the Haunted, once it's back on the field the effect Call has on it is negated, so it's pretty much like if we just normal summoned it back to the board. An interesting piece of interaction I'll be sure to remember going forward. We draw another copy of DNA Surgery, running on fumes at this point when we desperately need another monster. Regardless, we swing in for another 1200 points of damage. Ransborg bricks yet again and we draw into Explore the Dragon, the one monster in our deck that can't actually deal battle damage. We swing in for another 1200 and in the main phase 2 activate the second of Valley's effects. By tributing a monster and banishing itself, you can draw 2 cards from the deck. We target Explore the Dragon with this just to see if we can draw into anything that can put this man on lethal. We get an Infernal Dragon and return Soul for this exchange, setting the trap card. Ransborg's luck has finally run out, bricking for the 3rd consecutive turn, and we swing in for game on the following turn. A rocky start for sure. It's probably a good thing that neither of our decks could really get going in the duel. He prevented us from getting into our usual win condition with that Heavy Storm play, but from his side it just seems like he never really got to a state where Colossal Warrior was remotely viable. The creature swaps were probably a huge reason for that. With the Knight dethroned, we proceed to the semi-finals in yet another standing duel, our opponents being the girl we confronted all the way back in the underground arena, Aki Izayoi. This duel isn't optional result wise sadly, we do have to defeat her here and she's increasing the efficiency of her deck to ensure she won't go down easily. The first thing I have to mention is that for some strange reason she's no longer running the playset of her Black Garden, she's not even playing it at all for that matter. Her deck is more aggressive now technically, with more of a focus of accessing her B6 very quickly and trying to overwhelm us that way. I'm just not too sure if the removal of Black Garden helps her deck or hampers it overall. She can't half our monsters' attack points anymore and we play a plethora of beasts that outclass her Titanial. Moreover, the tokens were great materials for her synchro plays. I just feel like she's not seeing the forest for the trees. Pun entirely intended. As for the new addition, she's running a lone copy of the Recruiter in UFO Turtle. Despite not being a plant type monster, when it's destroyed it can summon a fire attribute monster that has less than 1500 attack points. The line for this card is to go right into Lonefire Blossom, which is a fire attribute monster, to then tribute it for Titanial using its effect. I'm not really a fan of her having yet more ways to reach Titanial, but I guess that's why she's in the semi-finals. She's ditched the 2 copies of Botanical Girl for 3 copies of Botanical Lion. Not only does this card gain 300 points for every plant type monster on the field, including itself by the way, it also has this secondary effect of not being able to be switched. What this essentially means is that it's invulnerable to creature swap, brain control and those line of effects. Something I found out the hard way on our first attempt when I creature swapped this thing and disgustingly found out that it wasn't going to do shit. The fact that it's a 4-star monster taking all of that into account is just plain foul. Violet Witch is the Witch of the Black Forest for plant type monsters, allowing a key to add 1 plant type monster with less than 1500 defense from the deck to her hand. Lonefire Blossom, once again being the prick it is, conveniently has 1400 defense points, so she can search for this card directly yet again. I'm amazed that she isn't playing more of these and the UFO turtles, to be honest. Weirdly, a classic card in the Fairy King Truesdale has been added to her deck. It's a 6-star really unimpressive monster that boosts the attack and defense of plant monsters when it's in defense position. I have no idea why you would want to use this in general. Its defense stat is weaker than its attack, so you're just wasting resources trying to use this, especially when her whole deck is centered around special summoning her best monsters directly from the deck itself. This can be special summoned by Lonefire, I just don't see why you would even bother when you have 3 copies of Titanial just sitting there. As for her spell and trap package, they mostly remain identical. She's playing the exact same spells she did before, adding 3 more strong spells in Brain Control, Lightning Vortex and Monster Reborn to complete the lineup. And she's taken out the Dust Tornado from her trap selection. This deck is stronger than her previous one for sure. It's just that it's optimizing the already great deck she had earlier in the game. Not much has really changed outside the Black Garden removal, since it doesn't really need to. Kind of reassuring as all the weaknesses and things we exploited in our prior match with the DNA surgery shenanigans are all still viable in this one as well. Aki wisely chooses to go second, throwing our entire hand off since we opened with Cyber Dragon. We draw a second copy of Creature Swap for turn, having to set the Call of the Haunted and Damage Pulverizer. Aki opens up with possibly the best hand you could on turn 1. She starts by activating the World Tree Continuous spell card. She then summons Lonefire Blossom and uses its effect to get Titanial on the board turn 1. We can't do anything to stop the direct attack and she ends her turn with a face down, which knowing our luck is going to be Solemn Judgment. We draw into Monster Reborn. Now, Titanial can negate an effect that targets a plant monster as long as she tributes another plant she controls. Fortunately, she only has Titanial on the board, so unless she wants to tribute that, which I don't mind, she can't do anything to stop us from special summoning Cyber Dragon and then off-handing it to her with Creature Swap. Not only do we now have full access to her strongest monster, we can then revive the Cyber Dragon with our set called the Haunted. She takes 700 points of damage from the battle and we opt not to attack her with the Cyber Dragon. I think I'm just giving her face down card too much respect in hindsight, a misfire for sure. We're parking the Monster Reborn in our hand. If she somehow outs her own Titanial, we can just take it right back. It's beautiful. As expected, she is able to out the board with her Lightning Vortex. She doesn't summon anything to the field, so we just revive Titanial with Monster Reborn and swing in again for another 2800 points. In the second main phase, we set the power bond we drew for turn, just as a little bit of bait. Maybe she'll waste a Mystical Space Typhoon on it or something. Aki has no other monsters in her hand it seems, as she sets another back row. We draw DNA Surgery for turn, and I'm tempted at this point to use it and turn everything to plant, just so we can generate value from Titanial's negation effects. For now though, we swing in for yet another 2800, putting her on a 1-turn clock. She has to out our monster this turn or it's over. We do activate DNA Surgery on her turn, and I kinda chickened out of the initial idea, opting for our default machine type pick. She negates this with her Solemn Judgment. Sure. Funnily enough, she revives our Cyber Dragon with Monster Reborn and sets a face down card. We draw a second copy of DNA Surgery and we have to swing over our Cyber Dragon. With her firmly on the back foot at this point, we can't give her an inch. We activate DNA Surgery on her turn again, and she wastes yet another Solemn Judgment to negate it, leaving her at a poverty 425 life points total. The game is trying to hand her the win here as we break once again with Power Bond, and she sets a further back row. We draw MST for our next turn and destroy the World Tree she activated on her first turn. Swing over to set Violet Witch, in which she adds Gigaplant to hand. At this point, she has no further players available to her, and we can finally swing in the game. Aside from the game outright trying to cheat with the constant breaks we were getting, this went as smoothly as it possibly could have. Creature swap turn 1 to counter the Titanial set the tone for the rest of the duel. We put enough pressure on her to the point where her deck couldn't really get going, doubly so with the Monster Reborn to get back the Titanial once she outed it the first time. A win over a key means we advance to the final stage of the Fortune Cup, the winner of this duel advancing to face the king himself. So I guess it's fitting that our dance partner this time around is our somewhat friendly mutual Yusei Fudo. This has been set out loosely throughout the game's story, with Yusei coming to your aid a few times. Your journeys have run parallel with each other. Yusei has more of a reason for competing than we do though, as Jack stole his ace monster Stardust Dragon a few years before the events of the story, and if Yusei reaches the finals, he can face his old rival for the chance of earning his monster back. We on the other hand are just here for the vibes of it. No sad backstory, no ambition. They sent us an invite, it would have been rude to just reject it. I never quite realised just how much of a chore it actually is to face Yusei in a riding duel format. When you're watching the show and you're captivated by the stakes and the music, whenever Yusei's been put on the back foot and he's able to just survive for yet another turn to have the chance to draw that out, it's exhilarating. But nah, I feel bad for every villain in the show now. I understand the pain. The amount of stall cards he plays with no recourse is plain diabolical. Yusei's entire philosophy in dueling reflects the real circumstances he's forced to overcome, using a whole deck of really weak monsters that swarm the field and combine their levels together through synchro summoning to reach his bigger players. It's a commentary of his childhood growing up in the satellite as an orphan. Weak alone, but those forced to live in the slums look out for one another, and together they're able to survive the unfair circumstances they find themselves in. As such, he plays all the monsters you'd be familiar with from the first season, the various Synchron tuner monsters in Junk Synchron, Turbo Synchron and Nitro Synchron. Junk Synchron is the best out of the three as its effect allows him to special summon a level 2 or below monster from the graveyard on normal summon. So as long as Yusei has a material in the grave, this can immediately transition to a level 4 or 5 Synchro player. Even higher if Quillbot Hedgehog is also in the graveyard, as it can special summon itself if there's a tuner currently on the field, extending the potential to a level 7 or 8 monster. The other two synchros are here simply for the specific Synchro Warrior in Turbo and Nitro Warrior, as they require the specific Synchron as material. This was just before Quick Draw Synchron was released into the game, which essentially serves as a level 5 generic Synchron tuner which can be used as a substitute for the ultra specific Synchrons. Sangan is here for the searches. He plays Speed Warrior because it's one of his main monsters in the anime. Tuning Bear is a level 1 monster that can raise its level to 2 when used for a Synchro Summon. This gives Yusei the flexibility to freely choose what monster he wants to Synchro at any particular time. He won't be forced to summon anything that's not suitable for the occasion just because the levels of the materials dictate it. Turret's Warrior is a level 5 monster that can be special summoned by tributing a warrior. He can then use his normal summon to summon his Junk Synchron for example and go straight into a level 8 Synchro monster, in which he does play. The monster selection at this point becomes really irksome to play against. Yusei runs multiple monsters that have the ability to survive at least one battle. Fortress Warrior doesn't take any battle damage and can evade destruction for one battle per turn. Shield Warrior is even goofier in this regard, as it can't be destroyed by battle twice per turn, meaning this otherwise weak monster needs to be attacked 3 times in a single turn if you want to get over it conventionally. Shield Warrior can banish itself from the grave to prevent any monster on the field from being destroyed for that turn. With the slow tempo inherently because of the lack of freely playable spell cards, these 3 monsters gives Yusei enough of a wall until he draws into the necessary pieces for any of his Synchro monsters, in which he can then mount a counterattack. In terms of the Synchro package, they're all pretty good for the roles they serve. Colossal Warrior is the obvious pick here. As we mentioned earlier in the video, it can continuously revive itself as long as it's destroyed by battle, and Yusei can get into this without too much trouble thanks to Turret Warrior. He doesn't actually have this card in the anime. I think they just included it since he should have his Stardust Dragon by this point in the story, but for some reason he doesn't. It does fit with the overall Warrior theming though. Junk Warrior is a 2300 beat stick that can further raise its attack points by the combined attack stat of every level 2 or below monster on the field. Yusei doesn't really use this to its full potential, as his level 2 monsters aren't really designed to stay on the field after the fact. You can build a really cool deck around Junk Warrior using 3 copies of Giant Germ and Nimble Momonga. Since they swarm the field and you only need to use one of them to go into Junk Warrior, you can oftentimes raise Warrior's attack with its effect by 2 to 3000 on a consistent basis. Armory Arm is a level 4 star monster that can equip itself to another monster on the field, boosting its attack points by 1000. It also sits at a pretty decent stat line at 1800 attack points. Not many normal monsters can out this, doubly so if you equip it with another copy of Arm. Nitro Warrior has several really cool abilities. It sits at a hefty 2800 attack points, and if you use a spell card before this card attacks, then Nitro Warrior will gain an instant 1000 points in the damage calculation. If it's then successful in destroying a monster, it can target a face-up defense position monster on the opponent's field, switch its positioning and then attack a second time. An amazing effect for when used firmly on the gas, and will be pretty hard to out without DNA surgery. Turbo Warrior halves the attack points of any level 6 or higher monster it battles during the damage calculation. As it adds 2500 attack points itself, unless it's facing like a 5-headed dragon or something, the effect guarantees it will swing over anything it attacks. Yusei plays all these synchros at 3 copies as well. Yusei plays the speed variants of Mystical Space Typhoon and Monster Reborn at a single copy. I will actually go over his other speed spells exclusive to the game because their counter requirements are absurdly low. Angel Baton is basically a weaker graceful character. As long as he has 4 speed counters, he can draw 2 cards from the deck, and then send 1 card from the hand to the graveyard. With the amount of cards he plays that can recycle resources from the grave to begin with, the cost isn't much of a hindrance unless he breaks. Summon Speeder can special summon 1 level 4 or below monster from the hand at the cost of 2 counters. It can't attack the turn it's summoned, but this doesn't really matter when it's going to be used as synchro material, as the synchro monster will be able to attack us no problem. Silver Contrails is a buffed Rush Recklessly, adding 1000 points to a monster's attack during the damage calculation for the exchange of 1 speed counter. I am genuinely surprised he isn't running more than 1 copy of this, given how free it is. Vision Burial is a speed spell variant of Foolish Revival, bringing back a level 2 or below monster from the grave by ditching 2 speed counters. It's destroyed in the end phase, but again, it's not going to matter when it will use the target for a synchro summon. The trap lineup is where the store reaches a whole new level of degeneracy. He has the staples in Mirror Force, Torrential Tribute, Bolt's Trap Hole and Solemn Judgment. Divine Wrath can negate a monster effect for the cost of discarding a card, and Magic Drain does the same thing for speed spells. Graceful Revival, as mentioned before, is the Call of the Haunted for level 2 or below monsters, in which he plays 2 copies. Every other trap he plays though has the express purpose of either negating the battle itself or battle damage. 2 copies of Scrap Iron Scarecrow is essentially a continuous negate attack for 1 battle only. So if we declare an attack, he flips the Scrap Iron Scarecrow face up. The attack is negated and then it resets. This card does not have a hard once per turn either, so because he's running multiple copies, if Yusei gets them both on the field, he's automatically safe for 2 attacks. We only play a single copy of Mystical Space Typhoon, mind you, so he's always going to have a reliable wall to lean into. Defense Draw can negate the damage he would have taken for that battle, and then he can draw a card from the deck. He also runs this at 2 copies. So far that's 2 single application traps and 2 continuous. Spirit Force at 1 copy will also make any battle damage he takes 0. He can then add a Warrior Tuner with less than 1500 defense points to the hand. These cards taken just in a vacuum are annoying enough, right? But in addition with some of the monsters he plays, Shieldwing specifically, we could just straight up find ourselves in a situation where we can't attack Yusei at all. Say he keeps Shieldwing on the field and he has 2 Scrap Iron Scarecrows set. At a bare minimum, it will take 5 monsters to clear his board. 3 to get over Shieldwing's basic effect and 2 to bait out the Scrap Iron Scarecrows. That's a full board we're talking about here. We don't play a deck package tailor-made to swarm the field either. He has way more monsters that can hit over our board than we do with his. This might very well be the toughest duel in the run so far. At least against Kameno we had at least a decent chance to OTK as small as it was. We just don't have that option piloting the Cyberdarks, so I guess it's time to find out. Yusei concludes his turn after setting a monster and a face down. We draw into Explore the Dragon, setting the damaged Pulverizer in our hand. We then normal summon Cyber Phoenix and attempt to swing over his face down. Lo and behold, it ends up being the worst case scenario, Shieldwing. We can't hit over this thing for at least another 2 turns now. Yusei extends his wall with another set card and we draw into Cyber Dragon, summoning Cyberdark Heel to the field. We try to swing over his other set monster and of course it's Fortress Warrior as well, another monster that takes multiple battles to destroy. Just great. We lose 400 points from the attempt and we end our turn. Yusei goes on the offensive by summoning Speed Warrior. For the turn that it's summoned only, its attack stat is doubled. Now sitting at 1800, he doesn't swing over Cyber Phoenix though, instead going for damage by destroying Cyberdark Heel, and we lose a further 1000 life points. He calls it quits by setting yet another back row. We draw a second copy of Cyber Phoenix and have to summon it to get enough bodies on the board. We do swing over his Speed Warrior and he takes 300 points from the battle. Yusei doesn't do anything and we draw another Exploder Dragon. With Cyber Dragon in hand, we can do the funniest thing ever the minute we draw DNA Surgery, but we still don't have the means to out the Shield Wing. I thought Yusei was about to do it himself on the summon of Toon Warrior. Instead, he just swings over our Cyber Phoenix and we draw Cyber Valley from the effect. At this point, he can just pick off our monsters turn by turn, and we need DNA Surgery to mount a comeback. For turn, we draw another useless damage pulverizer, and have to out the Toon Warrior with Exploder Dragon's effect. It's not pretty, but we just don't have any other plays right now. Yusei sets a third back row, and we draw a second copy of Cyber Valley. Summoning it to the field, we banish it alongside Keel to draw an additional 2 cards, gambling on the DNA Surgery. Instead, we draw another 2 useless trap cards in a third copy of Damage Pulverizer and Fusion Guard. Having just enough counters to resolve Mystical Space Typhoon, we pop the furthest right set card, which ends up being Solemn Judgment. Can't complain about that. Having stalled long enough, Yusei is able to mount a counterattack, summoning Junk Synchron and reviving Speed Warrior. He thankfully uses the Shield Wing as the level 2 to get Junk Warrior on the board, and the latter's effect boosts its attack by the combined attack of all level 2 or below monsters on his side of the field. Junk Warrior now sits at a massive 3800 points, destroying Cyber Phoenix and hitting us for 2600 points of damage. Fortress Warrior gets a piece of the action as well, inflicting a further 600, and we get Infernal Dragon from the draw effect. With only 2900 life points remaining, we are one direct attack away from losing the finals. For our last turn, we finally draw DNA Surgery, setting it on the board. The Cyber Valley we summon for turn ensures we will survive via its effect. Yusei changes Fortress Warrior back to defense, he then attempts a swing for game and we negate the battle, drawing Cyber Dragon off the back of Valley's effect. Yusei sets another back row. For turn, we draw another copy of Cyber Phoenix, special summoning Cyber Dragon to the field. Both this and DNA Surgery resolves and we're able to bring out our ace, Chimeritic Fortress Dragon with 4000 attack points. Despite the risk of a potential Mirror Force, we have to try, and so we swing with both our monsters. Cyber Phoenix hits through and Yusei negates the damage via defense draw. We swing in with Chimeritic, fully expecting another D draw. You wouldn't misplay it and use it on the weaker monster, and surprisingly this attack goes through, hitting Yusei for a huge 4000 points of damage. Not only does this bring our life points to almost even, he also loses 4 speed counters through that one battle. It's amazing how quickly things can change in one turn. The pendulum swings yet again when Yusei summons Turbo Synchron. It's a puny monster with the effect of switching the monster it battles into defense position. I just assumed that Chimeritic also gained 1000 defense points for every monster using its fusion. That isn't the case, it actually has 0 defense points, outing our best monster in the funniest way possible. Granted, it's not too big of a blow at this stage in the game. With another Cyber Dragon in our hand and the bigger body on the board, we're able to quickly take back control, summoning Infernal Dragon. Phoenix destroys Turbo Synchron, dealing 1100 points of damage. Infernal then attacks directly, which also goes through, and Yusei is one turn away from defeat. At this point, we have him banged to rights. There's no way he can come back from this. Infernal Dragon is destroyed in the end phase, but surely it does not matter at this point. Turn 19, Yusei destroys Phoenix with his Toon Warrior and we take 400 points of damage. Turn 20, we get Cyber Dragon back on the field and fuse his Toon Warrior with it for another Chimeritic. We attack for game, but that face down he has yet to use? You guessed it, it's Scrap Iron Scarecrow. Doesn't matter, we'll just summon Infernal Dragon and win on our next turn. Turn 21, Yusei sets a monster. Turn 22, we summon Proto Cyber Dragon. Even if he negates one of our attacks, we'll still have him beat. Is what I thought, until he revealed his other face down, Foolish Revival, and he survives yet again. The reason why I'm telling you the turn count is just to illustrate how difficult it actually is to get game on this man. Would you believe it, he survives all the way until turn 27. By this stage, I've given up trying to hit him for game directly, so we've just been baiting out his back row to then attack directly via Cyber Dark Edge's effect for 400, slowly whittling him down. He then top decks Monster Reborn and brings back his Junk Warrior, trying to get rid of Cyber Dark Edge. We do have the out in Cybernetic Hidden Technology, pitching our Proto Cyber Dragon for the cost. He has 300 life points. There's no way he should be able to turn this around, yet he keeps surviving each and every turn. It takes until turn 28, 10 turns after we pinned him into a corner, for us to finally hit him for lethal. I was genuinely convinced we were going to lose. I was just waiting for the plot armor and the goated theme song to kick in. you have to have a newfound appreciation for the villains of this show, man. The stress of a duel gradually slipping through your fingers is undeniable. Upon the conclusion of the finals, we suddenly pass out in the hallway of the arena. Once we come to, we find ourselves in this really bizarre ancient temple, greeted by the organizer of the tournament, Rex Godwin. Rex here is the director of Neo Domino City, the president if you will, and for the past 17 years he's been performing experiments and manipulating things in the background to reawaken the Crimson Dragon, a deity that fights its counterpart, the king of the underworld, every 5,000 years. To do this he needs the power of the 5 signers, so instead of seeking them out directly, he created us, alongside 4 other identical clones that look absolutely ridiculous in dark magician cosplay, each embedded with a fake signer mark. We're then forced to fight our doppelgangers in a Chef of Destruction styled gauntlet. The format of this matchup is a traditional standing duel. Where it differs is that we essentially have to fight them all consecutively. Once we defeat Alpha, we then move on to Beta, so on and so forth. If we lose at any point, we're then sent back to our previous save. Essentially, we have to defeat all 4 of them in one fell swoop. Where the Chef of Destruction thing applies is the life point stipulation. If you aren't aware, Chef is a hard as balls sequel to a pretty old Yu-Gi-Oh RPG in the Sacred Cards. It's often recognised to be a Kaiser version of the Sacred Cards, or at least the closest thing to it in an official capacity. In that game, your life points don't reset after every duel, you actually have to go to your bed to regain your life total. So if you forget to do it and have taken a shit ton of damage in a prior duel, you're going into your next matchup severely disenfranchised. This applies here as well, and that's the main reason why this is going to be so difficult. Even with how volatile the Cyber Dragon deck can be, in a best of 1 we do have a good chance of winning. We could open into Power Bond with the materials we needed and get an instant OTK. The Gauntlet is demanding consistency from us, something this deck simply isn't capable of. Even more so when our strategy is to use our life points as a cost to boost our monster's attack points. In the slim chance that we do actually reach the 3rd or final duel of this, what good will that do if we're hanging on by a thread and have no flexibility to play into our win conditions, unless we're certain that we can win on that turn to avoid the negative side effects of Power Bond? You might be asking yourself, what decks do the clones even play? Surely they are scaled accordingly for the stipulation in mind. You'd think that, but that isn't the case at all. They're all playing meta, or cards that were meta defining at the time. Alpha plays an even stronger variant of the zombies than the 2 we've already encountered. Beta, whilst running ice barriers, which really aren't that good of an archetype anyways, focuses on turboing out the one card of this route that was actually meta defining in Bryonak, Dragon of the Ice Barrier. It's a level 6 synchro monster that could bounce cards back to the hand equal to the amount discarded for the effect. Even if they are unable to get Bryonak on the field, they pivot to Wetlands, a field spell that boosts all level 2 Aqua type monsters attack by 1200 points. If you combine this with Unifrog, which they do for the record, a frog that can attack directly, even the so-called worst of the group isn't going to go down without a fight. The final 2 clones play Lightsworn and Teledad respectively. The same Teledad that had an iron grip on the format for a good 10 months, and was responsible in making a large part of the playbase at the time quit. Partly due to how broken Darkan Dragon is, and also because a single copy could easily go for over $200. People generally got priced out of the TCG when Teledad was at its strongest. Either you had the money to cough up for free dads, or you just weren't playing the bloody game. I think that just highlights how egregious this design is from a general perspective. If you were playing this game casually, where you could just build your own deck, due to how short the story mode is, if you aren't engaging with the optional duels or content like the World Championship mode to grind for DP, the deck you would have at this stage in the game wouldn't be anywhere close to meta either. I understand what they were trying to go for when designing this. I think it's really cool that the clones are all playing these extremely powerful decks to gather enough duel energy to summon the Crimson Dragon, but it shouldn't be a gauntlet though, no way. This is not the final duel of the game, mind you, but it will be the make or break for the run. If we're able to dispatch the first 2 without taking too much damage, we have a good matchup for the Lightsworn clone due to the aggressive nature of the deck. Teledad is going to be very difficult to maneuver around no matter the situation, so we'll just have to see how this actually goes. I think the arena we fight in having the Crimson Dragon printed on the field is a really cool detail. If you look to the right hand of the dragon, you'll see the heart mark that Rua gets towards the end of the series. Bear in mind, this game came out in 2008. The 6th mark didn't make its appearance in the anime until 2011 during the Arc Cradle saga. So I'm curious if Rua was never meant to become the 5th signer at all, like people suggest, and that it was always planned for him to attain Livestream Dragon way later on as he did. Alpha from the get-go gets his Zombie World field spell online. Its effect is DNA Surgery mixed with a control element. All monsters on the field and the grave become zombie monsters, and then you can only tribute summon zombies from that point forward. Great for him because he plays exclusively that type. This will prevent us from tributing something for our Cyber Dragons in the hand though. He ends his turn by summoning Paladin of the Cursed Dragon in attack position and setting a back row. We draw a different dimension capsule for turn, using its effect to search for our DNA Surgery so we can counter Zombie World. We then set our Call the Haunted special summoning Cyber Dragon per its effect, and normal summoning Exploder Dragon. Cyber Dragon swings over Paladin, and Alpha takes 200 points from the resolving battle. On the clapback, Alpha summons Mizuki in attack position and ends his turn. We draw Mystical Space Typhoon, and with the knowledge that we'll be grabbing our DNA Surgery once capsule resolves next turn, we use the MST to pop the face down instead of the Zombie World. We know Mizuki can revive a zombie by banishing itself from the grave, so we use our Monster Reborn to revive his Paladin to our side of the field. This provides us with another great attacker, while simultaneously removing a target from Mizuki. Paladin swings over Mizuki, dealing 200 points of damage, and Cyber Dragon swings in successfully for a free 2100. Alpha can only play another copy of Mizuki, which gives the first one a valid target, but we've got him pinned back at this point. He can't hit over our two stronger monsters, and if he tries to run over Exploder Dragon, it leaves him open for 2 direct attacks. We gain our DNA Surgery this turn setting it. As long as he doesn't draw into a heavy storm or something, we've eventually locked him out the game now. Summoning the Cyber Phoenix we drew for turn gives us more damage on the board. As I was figuring out if we had lethal, I accidentally read the effect of Paladin of the Cursed Dragon, and its effect is so ultra specific it becomes applicable here. This card is so good paired with Zombie World because it can special summon a level 4 or below zombie type monster from the opponent's graveyard. Zombie World turning all of our monsters into that type gives him free reign to pluck whatever he wants from it. We can use it to take his other Mizuki, meaning he can't revive anything as his graveyard would be empty. I didn't know about this when we used Monster Reborn. I was more focused on the attack stat of Paladin and removing a valid target from Mizuki. It's just happenstance we got even more value from it. With the Mizuki now fighting on our side, we can finally crash our Exploder Dragon into his, clearing the way for the rest of our board to wipe away his life points. That is the sort of duel we needed, and what we'll continue to need if we stand any chance against the others. Beta starts the duel slow with a humble T-set and pass, low-key hoping he's bricked here so we can get to the Light Swan guy with our life points intact. We draw MST for turn and take out his face down salvage. It's a great target knowing the deck they pilot, but was kind of hoping to hit something more valuable here. We set DNA Surgery and have nothing to summon other than the Exploder Dragon. Even though Exploder Dragon can't destroy monsters through battle, we can still attack into the set monster just to see what he's working with. If it ends up being a flip effect, I'd rather it resolve prematurely as well. The set monster ends up being Acolyte of the Ice Barrier, something that can't be destroyed by a monster with 1900 points or more, and we end our turn. In the standby phase, we resolve our DNA Surgery, turning all monsters on the field to the machine type. Beta summons Practitioner of the Ice Barrier, a level 2 tuner, and tunes it with the level 4 Acolyte synchro summoning Bryanak. He does use the effect of Bryanak to bounce back both of our cards, and we take a solid 2300 points of damage here. This forces the play of us crashing Exploder Dragon into Bryanak just to get it off the field, which still leaves us defenseless on the following turn. We do get a different dimension capsule for our draw though, so we use it to target Protoss Cyber Dragon. This way we can get the value from the DNA Surgery whilst protecting our real Cyber Dragons just in case he's able to get another Bryanak on the field. Beta summons another copy of Practitioner and swings in for an additional 1300 points. He doesn't have enough materials to synchro summon, but we are sitting at a dangerously low 4400 life points at this stage. We draw a brick in Cyber Valley, summoning it. At this point, we just have to hope he doesn't have another level 4 monster in the hand to go into another Bryanak. If we can survive this turn without incident, we can pivot into Chimeritic Fortress Dragon and mount a counter attack. This risk does pay off once he tributes Practitioner to summon Great Monk of the Ice Barrier, a 2200 defender that can't be destroyed by spell or trap effects. He does set a back row for the first time in a while though, which does make me a tad wary. We draw Cyber Phoenix for turn, and Dimension Capsule does resolve, adding Proto Cyber Dragon to hand. We have to go for it now. DNA Surgery turns all monsters back into machine types, and we contact fuse our Proto Cyber Dragon with their Monk. We keep Valiant on the field just in case that set card is a Mirror Force, plus the free negate and draw is simply too valuable at this point. We attempt to swing for 2000 points, and Beta flips Gravity Bind. Now all level 4 or above monsters can't declare an attack, cutting us off from our win condition. Beta summons Feng Shui and uses its effect. By discarding a card, he can choose one attribute, and monsters of that attribute can't declare an attack. Naturally, he chooses Dark, which is kind of a misplay since we can't declare an attack anyway because of the Gravity Bind. Feng Shui swings it into Cyber Valley and we negate the battle, drawing another copy of Proto Cyber Dragon from the effect. We draw Cyber Phoenix for turn, and Proto Cyber Dragon is actually able to swing over Feng Shui stat-wise. Plus, it's a level 3 monster, so Gravity Bind won't affect it either. The attack is successful and Beta takes the first bit of damage in the duel. We are 10 turns in, ladies and gentlemen, and we've only been able to manage 300 points. Beta is now forced to rely on top decking and sets the monster they drew for turn. Drawing Creature Swap for turn, we set Cyber Phoenix and swing into the set monster, which conveniently ends up being Penguin Soldier. Penguin bounces both Chimeritic back to the extra deck and Phoenix back to the hand. I'm not too mad about this as we aren't able to attack with Chimeritic anyways. The game at this point starts to do its usual cheating as he top decks another Penguin Soldier. What are the chances? Bouncing Proto and Phoenix back to our hand once again. Since we have 7 cards currently in our hand, we have to pitch one of them in the end phase, so we ditch Defusion. Beta sets another monster and we draw Pot of Greed, drawing an additional 2 cards. Neither Cyber Dragon or Phoenix are useful because of the Gravity Bind. I was really hoping for an MST there. I suspect the set was a third Penguin Soldier, so we summon our Cyber Phoenix and attack mode instead, ditching the other copy from our hand. I am now going to summarise the rest of the duel, because this goes on for far too long, believe it or not. In the following turns, we extend our board presence with Infernal Dragon and Cyber Valley. Beta does the same with his Mother Grizzly and the Wetlands Field spell. At turn 25, he's able to bring back his tuner from the grave with Monster Reborn. Wetlands can't boost its attack funnily enough thanks to our DNA Surgery, so he attempts to destroy it with Mystical Space Typhoon. We chain our second DNA Surgery in response, which brings us back to square one. With no other options left, he tunes the Mother Grizzly with the tuner to synchro summon another copy of Bryanak. This is where the AI fortunately capitulates. Prioritising damage, it uses Bryanak's effect to bounce back his own Gravity Bind, as it also affects their level 4 and above monsters. He then discards his entire hand to clear our 2 trap cards in Surgery and Return Soul, including the Gravity Bind. Keep in mind we have Proto Cyber Dragon, the original, Power Bond and Limiter Removal currently sitting in our hand. So whilst we do take a further 1100 points of damage when Bryanak swings over Cyber Phoenix, we have game now. Down to the combination of Power Bond and Limiter Removal, the Cyber Twin Dragon we summoned has a combined 12,000 attack points. More than enough to deal over 9,000 points of damage to Beta once we swing into the Infernal Dragon we gave them through the effect of Creature Swap, virtually OTKing them. The anime style comeback aside, because that was absolutely insanity, we are going into the hardest part of the gauntlet with less than half of our original life point total. The only plausible way of surviving this now is by getting a fast kill over the Light Swans. If Judgment Dragon hits the field, we are done. Our opening hand this time around is quite decent, so we search Monster Reborn with our different dimension capsule. Because we need to keep 4 individual Light Swans away from their graveyard, we can use Reborns as a means of delaying his win condition. Summoning Cyber Phoenix isn't the best play here, but the extra draw is just too good to pass up in such dire straits. Gamma sets a monster. It's most likely Raikou given the archetype alongside 2 face downs. We draw our second copy of Phoenix, summoning it in attack position. It's not ideal, but we swing into the face down Necrogana, taking 100 points from the battle. This monster can be quite problematic. When it's in the graveyard, it can banish itself to negate one of our attacks. Not what we want to see at all. Gamma sets another monster and we draw a third Cyber Phoenix. Bro, come on. We do get our Monster Reborn from different dimension capsule though, so at least that's something. We try to swing into his other set monster and I do believe this is actually Raikou, as Gamma uses Mirror Force to clear our entire board. You wouldn't go out of your way to protect it if it was another Necrogana or something. It's a good thing we hadn't already normal summoned this turn, so we set this third Cyber Phoenix. The face down was Raikou and it pots our Phoenix once it flips face up. Raikou is then tributed for Light Swan Celestia, and with our field completely empty, we take a devastating 2900 points of damage, hanging on by a thread with only 300 life points. For turn, we draw a Proto Cyber Dragon, and with Power Bond in hand, we have a decision to make. We might be able to OTK Gamma as long as we can successfully get Cyber Twin Dragon on the field. The remaining face down was the deciding factor in all of this. Recognising Jane in her grave, we use our Monster Reborn to revive it. He can't have another Mirror Force as it's set to limited in this format. If the remaining set was anything that can out Twin Dragon, Bottomless, ideally Solemn Judgment. I was confident the AI would use it here to counter their own card, a prediction that is proven to be correct when Gamma Bottomless Trap holds their own Jane. With no other Necrogana in the grave, we special summon our Cyber Dragon to the field, whilst committing our normal summon to explore the dragon. This was a complete misplay on my behalf, as we did have game if we power bonded here. The stress of the situation completely fumbled the maths in my head, and I think looking back now I was fearing a potential Honest in hand. If Gamma had Honest we would lose, so I think this was actually the correct play now that I'm actually looking back on it. Instead, we destroyed Celestia with Explore the Dragon, then we deal 1500 points of damage once Sidra takes out Gardener. Gardener can only negate one attack from the graveyard, so as long as he doesn't have anything to out the Cyber Dragon, we can win on the next turn. Gamma sets a monster and we draw DNA Surgery for turn, setting it immediately. We summon Proto Cyber Dragon, attacking into the set card. I want to bait out the Necrogana if possible, which is successful, and our Cyber Dragon takes out the set Lumina. This removes Gamma's only negate from the game, and on the following turn we're able to power bond against his open board, dealing 1200 points of direct damage. A hard earned victory for sure, but still short lived, as we face off against Delta and his Teledad deck, with only 300 life points to our name. One misplay, one bad hand, one break is all it takes to wipe away our remaining life points and send us right back to the beginning of the gauntlet. Our opening hand isn't actually that bad, drawing a second copy of Infernal Dragon for our turn. Using Future Fusion, we target Cyber Twin Dragon, milling 2 copies of the original from the deck. We set DNA Surgery, summoning Infernal Dragon to serve as our offensive wall. Delta opens up with a heavy Mystical Space Typhoon, and so we wait until he targets Future Fusion before chaining our DNA Surgery. As long as one of our win conditions remain on the field, we still have a chance. He then uses Foolish Burial to mill a copy of Necrogana for the negate effect, activating Mystic Plasma Zone, boosting all of his dark monsters by 500 points. This indirectly boosts Infernal Dragon's attack to 2500, also being a dark attribute monster itself, and he ends his turn with a set monster and a face down. We draw Proto Cyber Dragon for turn, summoning our second copy of Infernal Dragon to put the screws on Delta. Delta counters this with Bottomless Trap Hole, banishing the second copy, preventing us from attacking this turn, as doing so will leave us wide open in the end phase. Delta sets another monster and we draw Cyber Valley. Valley's effects will ensure our survival, and the free draw is always a positive. This baits him into revealing his second copy of Necrogana, and we negate the attack with Valley's effects. Drawing another copy of Cyber Phoenix, he sets a third monster in main phase 2. We draw a second copy of Proto Cyber Dragon, and with a target on the field, contact views it with the Necrogana to summon our Chimeric Fortress Dragon, which is also boosted to 2500 thanks to their field spell. At this point, I want Delta to negate our attacks with the Garners. If we flip his remaining 2 monsters face up, it will allow us to contact views again next turn, which potentially gets us game. He does take the bait, it's just that his monsters don't get flipped up unfortunately. In his next turn, he rids the field of his own back row with Heavy Storm. It's the best play he could make since DNA Surgery was active, and his field spell was doing way more for us than him. We draw Mystical Space Typhoon for turn, summoning Cyber Phoenix. Potentially a misplay, but we can keep Infernal on the field by tributing the Phoenix, and we attempt to swing into his right set monster, and Delta negates it with his second Garner. Chimeric is able to swing over the set Doom Caliber Knight, and Infernal Dragon's effect still resolves despite its attack having been negated, and we get the vulnerable Phoenix off the field to revive Infernal. For the first time in the duel, the tempo appears to be shifting in our direction. Delta ends his turn without playing anything at all. We draw Defusion, summoning our second Cyber Phoenix as we did before for the revival effects of Infernal Dragon. Chimeric swings over his final set monster in Snipe Hunter, and we deal the first bit of damage in the duel, a good 3200 to boot. Still a long way to go, but it's a start. In the end phase, we tribute Phoenix to revive Infernal once again. Even with our life points being so low, we're so close to victory as well from this position. If Delta breaks, we win. If he sets a back row, we can pop it with MST and we still win. A set monster is enough to delay lethal for an extra turn, and that just might be enough given the AI's tendency to cheat. Delta draws, and that's Fate's Sword Revealing Light, ending his turn. Against all the odds, against 4 meta-defining threats, despite only having 8,000 life points to their combined 32,000, we somehow come out on the other end victorious. MST destroys the Sword Revealing Light, and we power bond to achieve lethal. Holy shit. With the dual energy now acquired, our arm glows with a crimson mark just as it did the first time we met a key in the underground. It's so generic as well, it looks like the tribal tattoo everyone gets for their first one. Godwin tries to summon the Crimson Dragon and the latter rejects it, lamenting that fake imitations aren't enough. He needs the real signers to achieve his goals, which he does have, mind you. He invited all 4 of the other signers to the Fortune Cup, so why he doesn't just use them instead of this Kingdom Hearts convoluted idea, I will never know. You're not saying all, bro. It just makes Godwin seem like an utter idiot in this game, where in the anime it was actually kinda genius in how he went about everything to achieve his plan. We pass out due to the pain, I guess, and find ourselves back in the stadium's hallways where we initially passed out. Bolt Tanner finds us and lets us know our final challenge awaits us. We still have the chance to dethrone the current king, Jack Atlas, for winning the tournament. So let's put an end to all of this, shall we? Worthy of the king's status, Jack Atlas here plays a pretty good beatdown deck, using the Beast Golem engine, an archetype of 3 monsters that can special summon each other as long as you have Big Beast Golem on the field, which can normal summon itself without a tribute when you don't control any other monsters. This pivots into his larger synchro plays in his boss monster, the Red Demon's Dragon. He also does this through the effect of Vice Dragon, a level 5 dragon which is essentially a weaker version of Cyber Dragon. It can also special summon itself when the opponent controls a monster when you don't, but it starts a halved as a trade-off. He will only do this whenever he has Dark Resonator in hand to go into Red Demon's Dragon. As a boss monster, it's pretty well balanced in all honesty. A level 8 synchro that sits at a hefty 3000 attack points, with a really cool effect that complements his beatdown strategy. If Red Demon's Dragon attacks a defense position monster, all other set monsters on the opponent's side of the field are wiped away. This makes Red Demons an out to pretty much any hard wall that can't be destroyed by battle, as well as clearing the way for his other monsters to inflict heavy damage. The trade-off is that whatever monsters you control that don't attack are also destroyed. So if you have Red Demon's Dragon on the field, you're essentially mandated to go all in with the offense. This makes it a heavy mandate for Mirror Force, but we unfortunately don't play it. Aside from that, he plays 2 copies of Mystic Tomato to turbo into Dark Resonator, and 2 copies of the Tuna Dragon Magma Draco. It sits at a decent 1400 points for a level 2 monster, and whenever it deals battle damage, it gains an additional 200 attack points. He has the fusion monster Multiple Beast Golem in his extra deck, and that confused the hell out of me because it doesn't work with Miracle Fusion. That's when I saw in his spell package a card called Speed Fusion. Speed Fusion requires 2 speed counters and is basically polymerization. It turns out Poly was in the game after all. We've been playing this garbage Cyber Dark deck for nothing. I don't even know how the hell I missed this because I checked every resource I could find and I didn't see Speed Fusion listed anywhere. In fact, one of the main resources I was using at the time complained multiple times about the lack of polymerization. I guess they aren't wrong, it isn't called Poly after all, but still, this would have been useful to know like 10 duels ago. The rest of his spell package is decent, I guess, filled with all the power spells. Most of these are going to be straight up unplayable with a 6 counter requirement, but there's a few that might actually come up, so we'll address them. Mystical Space Typhoon obviously only requires 2 counters to activate, and this serves as spot removal. He plays 2 copies of Soul Exchange, which if you didn't know, allows you to tribute a monster your opponent controls for the cost of not being able to declare an attack on the turn it's used. This also sits at a poverty 2 counter requirement, so it could come up for him to get Big Beast Golem and even Victory Dragon on the field without having to sacrifice something himself. Shrink halves the attack of one monster for a turn and it also sits at 2 counters. The speed spell Jack Atlas is mostly famous for is End of the Storm. This card appeared several times during the Fortune Cup arc and was treated as an all-encompassing speed spell that was a big deal whenever it made its appearance. For the cost of 8 counters, all monsters on the field are destroyed. Then each player is burned for 300 points of damage for each of their own monsters that were sent to the graveyard. In the anime, I guess it was far more powerful due to the 4000 points format. I just don't see a use for this outside of an aura moment though. If he's leading in the duel, Jack has literally no reasons to use this, and if we're putting the screws on him, he won't have enough tokens left anyway to use the card. Now that I'm thinking about this more logically, I guess it can be useful if he has lethal on the opponent. Why risk attacking into a trap card when you can just nuke the field and burn the game instead? Speaking of trap cards, Jack's trap lineup is probably one of the more competent selections I've seen. He plays the power trap so he can keep a tight grip on what hits the field. Mirror Force, Bolton's Trap Hole, Torrential Tribute, Dimensional Prison and Solemn are all here and accounted for. Magic Drain is a strange choice, but I guess with the slower format you have more of a chance to hit a pivotal speed spell at the right time. He also runs 2 copies of Shadow Spell. This prevents one of our monsters from attacking and it loses 700 attack points as well. This card is an oldie but goldie. Since Jack plays several monsters with over 2000 attack points, things our Cyberdarks can't run over, Shadow Spell has the potential to take away our only other option to keep his board in check in the Cyber Dragon. All it takes is a 200 point reduction and he can easily hit over them as well. Dark Illusion can negate a spell or trap that targets a dark attribute monster. Most of his deck is comprised of this attribute, including his ace monster, granting them a layer of protection. Prideful Roar is an interesting battle trap. During the damage calculation, if his monster is battling an opponent's monster that's stronger, he can pay life points equal to the difference, and his monster gains those points in attack plus an extra 300 to ensure it will win the battle. Used at the right time, this can virtually hit over any card, Cyber End Dragon, Chimeritic Fortress Dragon, so I'm pretty shocked he's only running this at one copy. The life point cost is something you have to keep your eye on, it's just that 8000 is a lot to play with. His final trap is a lone copy of Lineage of Destruction. As mentioned in the Bomber duel, whenever a monster destroys a defense position monster, if you activate this trap, the monster can attack a second time. This card was made specifically for Red Demon's Dragon, guaranteeing a free direct attack on top of its already lucrative effect. Overall, this isn't going to be the hardest duel of the run. God no, you just saw what we had to go through. Ryan duel wise though, I think he probably is. With Yusei, we always had the ability to swing over his weaker materials because of the low attack points, so even when he tried to stall us out the game with the constant trap cards, there was little he could do to out the board itself. Whilst Jack plays a similar amount of traps, his monsters on average do outpoint the majority of ours. Him stalling can actually lead to a situation where he's able to take back control and make the duel that much harder to pull back. For our first turn, we set DNA Surgery, summoning Cyber Phoenix in attack position. Jack is able to normal summon his big piece golem without a tribute since we have a monster currently on the field. It swings into Cyber Phoenix and we take 900 points of damage, drawing Explode Dragon from the deck. He ends his turn with a face down. We draw Damage Pulverizer and have no other option but to summon Explode Dragon. None of our normal monsters can out a big piece golem sadly, even Cyber Dragon only ties with it, so we set the Damage Pulverizer and swing into the big piece. Sure, it will leave us defenseless the following turn, but it will force Jack into summoning a weaker monster since he can't take advantage of the Cyber Dragon-like effects. He immediately goes back on the offense with Twin Sword Marauder, dealing 1600 points of damage. We also lose one speed counter from the encounter. He doesn't set anything else, so we might be free to hit over it with one of our Cyberdarks on the following turn. We draw Proto Cyber Dragon for turn, which means we can extend it into Chimeritic Fortress Dragon when we want to. Instead, we summon Cyberdark Heal, equipping it with the Exploder Dragon from the graveyard, wanting to save the Chimeritic player until he summons something we simply can't get over. Jack counters with his Prideful Roar and he pays 200 life points, the difference between our monster's attack points, for his Twin Sword to gain an additional 500. We take 300 points from the battle and Exploder Dragon is sent to the graveyard. Keeping a body on the board is nice and all, but virtually every monster in his deck is stronger than 800 points, leading us to take a lot more damage in the following turn when he tributes his Twin Sword Marauder for another big piece golem. Jack sets another back row for insurance and so far this hasn't been a good start. 6 turns in already and losing more than half of our life points. In the end phase, we activate our DNA Surgery, turning all monsters on the field into machine types. We draw a brick in Damage Pulverizer, setting it, and summon our Proto Cyber Dragon to contact fuse into Chimeritic. It only has 2000 attack, but that's simply better than the alternative. We are able to resolve the board wipe, but Jack Solemn Judgments to summon of Chimeritic Fortress Dragon itself. An understandable move, but one I'm okay with. We hadn't gotten close to reducing his life points naturally, so for him to willingly burn half of them to stop a measly 2000 attacker can only be a good thing for us. On the following move, he summons Medium Piece Golem, swinging in for an additional 1600 points of damage, removing one of our speed counters. He's effectively put us on a 2-turn clock now, but a 1600 is something we can get over with our Cyber Darks. He doesn't set any further back row either to prevent us from doing so. We draw a second copy of Cyber Dark Edge for turn, summoning Horn, equipping it with the Exploder Dragon in the graveyard. Since Horn has the ability of piercing damage, it just seems like the best chance to start dealing some real damage if we force him into a defensive position. Cyberdark Horn swings over the medium piece golem, inflicting 200 points of damage. With 10 speed counters in hand, Jack attempts to wipe our field clean with the End of the Storm. Because of the damage dealing effect, in which we would have taken 600 points here, we were actually able to negate the effect of this with our ultra specific Damage Pulverizer, effectively shutting down his strongest speed spells from ever being able to be played in this duel. I never imagined the traps we were forced to play for this run were actually going to be useful to this degree. They were mainly here to buff the deck count. Zane was truly ahead of his time. Pulverizer's second effect allows us both to draw one card, and we draw Cybernetic Hidden Technology. Jack ends his turn with a set monster and 2 back rows. We draw another copy of Proto Cyber Dragon for turn. Attempting to swing into his face turn monster, he counters with Shadow spells, stopping the attack. Cyber Horn's attack points are reduced by 700 to 1100. In main phase 2, we normal summon Inferno Dragon, and Jack wipes the board clean with a Torrential Tribute. In his standby phase, we activate the Cybernetic Hidden Technology reset just to get it online. He normal summons Magma Draco and swings in for 1400, putting us firmly on a 1-turn clock. Draco gains an additional 200 points for dealing damage, now sitting at 1600 attack. He only has one card in hand and it doesn't appear to be a trap card. We draw Fusion Guard for turn and immediately summon our Proto Cyber Dragon, contact fusing once again into a 2000 Chimeritic Fortress Dragon. We land our first direct attack of the duel, if you can believe it, reducing his life points to 1700 and removing 2 speed counters from his inventory. Jack sets a monster and a back row. We draw yet another copy of Fusion Guard for our turn, summoning Cyber Dark Edge and equipping the Exploder Dragon to it once again. Attempting game, Chimeritic swings into the set Mystic Tomato. This revives another copy in defense position. Instead of attacking into it with our Cyber Dark, we instead use Edge's effect to half its current attack points so we can attack directly. Jack takes 900 points from the battle, which effectively handles the duel. Even if he's able to out the Cyber Dark Edge, we still have another copy in hand. The only way out for him at this stage is to somehow get Red Demon's Dragon on the board and deal the remaining points of damage through sheer attack power. Jack fails to do so, setting one final back row. And that's game, ladies and gentlemen. He doesn't have the outs, so Cyber Dark Edge deals the remaining 800 points with a direct attack. Zane overcomes the former king of Neo Domino City, and we have successfully completed the challenge. You can beat the story mode of Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship 2009 using ONLY Zane Truesdale's card pool. Jack Atlas offers his congratulations, handing over Yusei's prize card, Stardust Dragon, over to us. Godwin lets us go, having no further use for Hell Kaiser nor his clones. Not like he could stop us anyway. What's he going to do? Arrest us in front of the entire arena? We encounter Yusei outside of the stadium and he reluctantly accepts his ace card, tying up the final loose end left in the story. Overall, this challenge was a bit of a roller coaster. Cyber Dragons are super fun to play, it's why I wanted to do this in the first place. I was just surprised at the card pool Zane used, as it ended up being pretty top heavy with not a lot of counterplays, if plan A didn't work out for some reason. The traps with specific requirements can work in the anime where you will always have access to a Cyber Dragon card. That doesn't exactly translate well to the real card game though, when only 6 of your cards in a 40 card deck is considered a Cyber Dragon, so you're otherwise shut off from the beneficial effects of Cybernetic Hidden Technology. If the card requirement just listed Cyber instead of Cyber Dragons specifically, so it could at least be used in conjunction with Phoenix and the Cyber Darks, Zane's trap lineup would actually suit the deck a lot better than it does currently. We excelled against fellow aggro decks because we could just use their own board as materials for our fusions. It's the lack of removal or generic traps that just made dueling anyone else with a slower tempo hell to overcome. Kameno proving more of a challenge than the meta gauntlet isn't something that should ever happen in a linear story like this. That's Yu-Gi-Oh! I suppose, styles make the matchups, and when you're shut off from dealing a boatload of damage, a deck like this is always going to struggle. If you made it to the end, thank you as always, you're the real ones. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you'd like to see more challenge videos in the vein of this. And comment down below if you have any specific ideas of runs that you'd like me to take on in the future. I do have other videos being worked on at this point in time, so please look forward to that. I think the next one is going to be quite unique. I fancy a bit of Forbidden Memories action. It just depends on which video ends up getting finished first. Anyways, that's all from me. I'll catch you in the next one and have a blessed rest of your day guys. Bye bye for now.